Good evening, everyone. This is Yogi Chander. With me tonight is Derek Hunter. Derek, I am so pleased to have you. And before we start talking, I'd really like to read your bio because I just there's no way to summarize it. I'm just gonna have to read it. It's important to hear. So
Sure.
everyone, Derek Hunter is a writer of fiction and nonfiction, the founder of Love Chaos, a non-dogmatic, agnostic philosophy and way of life. Hunter created Love Chaos in 2014 with the publication of the first book, Love Chaos. It was conceived as a means for Hunter to help himself in a dark time in his life and also to help others. Love Chaos grew and developed as he grew and developed, resulting in the publication of the second book of Love Chaos in Theory and Practice in 2019, then culminating in 2020's The End of the World. Hunter is currently at work for the second book in the Story of Us All trilogy, White. Red, the third book in the trilogy, will follow. Black, the first book, was published in 2018. Once the trilogy is complete, Hunter will begin work on a surrealist fictional alternative biography on the author of the plays and poems with William Shakespeare's name on them. Cool. The works of fiction that Hunter has written and published, surrealist psychological novels and short stories, have much of the philosophy of Love Chaos within them, expressed through the narratives, as storytelling is the key to the books. However much the disorienting style is important, the stories themselves are prime. Hunter also works as a counselor, helping those struggling with addiction and crime, spends time as a father to his son, and generally turning his life into a work of art, however imperfect, to the best of his abilities. All aspects of Hunter's work is interconnected to one another through his philosophy of Love Chaos. Each separate part, though, a book, an album, Love Chaos itself, can be appreciated and enjoyed separately. And I love that, Hunter. I want to let that sink in for a sec to people. But I love that your work is interconnected and that they can also be enjoyed separately. The modular aspect is awesome.
Yes, definitely. It's something that I think every artist, every creative person has a particular philosophy or vision of the world. I think if you read any book irregardless of the quality of the writing, irregardless of I really feel strongly that everyone has a particular vision, and I think just for me, it was something that Navier is here. Very cool.
Navier is here. Aloha, Navier. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks for being here. So yeah, for me, it was just something that it connected as you read that very well. That description of yeah, thank you. And it was something that
I'm a professional cold reader.
Yeah, right. I can tell. Right. Yeah. So it was just something that happened to coincide with a particular time in my life where I needed something. Oh, Michelle's here too. Hey, Michelle.
Michelle Embry, greetings.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
So it was just that it was Love Chaos came out at a time when I needed something, and I've mentioned this in previous podcasts. Like, I have a lot of respect for previous traditions and belief systems. They just didn't work for me. So that's why I had to create my own system.
Derek, I got to tell you something right now. I've had this concept lately that fits that perfectly. It's so I'm a former locksmith, and so I always think of the key that you have, that there's a lock that it goes to, but it doesn't quite fit right, but it works. It's a key, and the lock is the right lock for the key, but it doesn't quite work right. There's always a little something you got to do to it and stuff, and so it's not the right key for you. You just got to have another key, And we put up with those things. We put up with those keys that aren't perfect, I think, in our lives a little too long. And I like your bravery in stepping forward into it.
Yeah, that's it. I think you bring up something that's important for people, is that a lot of people, I think, they find keys that don't necessarily fit a keyhole,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they force it in anyhow, just because they see other people doing it,
Yes. Yes.
and to the detriment of their own lives. I think that a lot of times people struggle with their own belief systems, and perhaps that's a good thing too. I think having certain amount of conflict about your own belief system is probably healthy anyway.
I think
But it's certainly, I think a lot of suffering takes place because people's lives don't match with their belief systems.
yeah. There's a big disconnect a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I bet you see that a lot in your counseling practice.
Yes, I do. I meet mostly, currently at my job I've been at for about 3.5 years is a reentry program. And, here in California, we have an intensely high population in the prisons. Our prison populations are enormous. We've just got way too many people in prisons. Most people are in prison as drug related and really need treatment and not incarceration.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and so
They're in
it,
conflict. They need to, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
you
they
know,
need what you're saying.
yeah, I mean, prison really is, I don't really think that prison itself is really an effective thing anyway. And a lot of the studies have shown it hasn't been. I think that prison can be, and I certainly think that for certain people who are extremely dangerous, um, prison could be helpful to them. But I mean, a lot of the guys I worked with, I mean, are gang members. They have had streaks of violence in them, and they have committed violence, and some of them have killed people. And so some of the guys I've worked at, some of the, if I can think of a few, come to my mind immediately, were really, in a lot of ways, great human beings. And a lot of them committed the murders when they were teenagers, and it was gang related.
Oh, man, harsh.
Yeah. So but so what, going back to your question is that, in the prisons, there is some level of treatment there, not too much. Um, Most of it is religion. And
Mm,
so, uh, a lot of
interesting.
it, yeah, a lot of guys will turn to the Bible and as a source of some kind of help for them.
Mm,
But and certainly it can work. But the vast majority of cases, what I've noticed with these guys who turn to religion, whether it could be Christianity, it could be Islam. Those are the two main ones that I've come across, and
mm.
they the spirituality that they believe in doesn't really address the underlying reasons for why they have problems. And
I
so
find that true of most religions in general for
yeah,
everybody.
like it doesn't, they get all excited about God and they bring their Bible up or the Quran or whatever, and they're just like all gung ho, and they can speak the good speech and say the right things at the right time, but they're not
Mm,
really dealing with their emotional issues, their hangups from childhood, their scars, their traumas, their lack of social skills, and just dealing with society and society's terms, and and they don't want to. They don't really. So they're excited about God, 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 and then once they get burnt out about that after a few months, then they relapse into the drug addiction and the criminality and find themselves back in prison again.
is that
So
usually a kind of deeper despair that they go into, or deeper, does it get worse?
yes, and I worked at other places that were rehabs, not necessarily. The place I work at now is for guys coming out of prison. So
Mm-hmm.
a reentry program is they're re-entering society. And
Mm-hmm.
so they are coming back into society to reacclimate. Some of them have been gone for a very long time. Some of them first went into prison at like 18, 19 and had 10, 20-year sentences. So they're coming back like, they've spent, again, like 10, 20 years of their life behind bars. So there's a lot of adjusting that they have to do. Yeah.
And so, that's my mind when you really think about it like that.
Yeah. And, so it's a difficult battle, but so for them, there certainly is a great deal of despair, I think, there. But I also feel like they've inspired me a lot of times because they've gone through, far worser things than I've ever gone through, and yet they still don't give up on life.
Nice.
They don't give up on themselves. They don't give up on making things work. So that's very inspiring to me, and it really helps too when if I get into a self-pitying mood of my own despair and my own depression or my own low sense of self-worth. It helps to remind myself that that like these guys in particular have gone through far darker struggles than I have, and yet are still holding on to a good attitude and have not given up. But certainly there are people who have, and I've run into them, and you can tell that their spirit has been defeated, and it's very sad, for sure.
Now that brings up a question in my mind: the spirit of being defeated. So, do you find that whether or not they're influenced by their newfound religion, do you feel that people are typically motivated for change, even if it may be a short-term change just to get out of prison, or do you think that people are just kind of like looking to be saved or looking to be kept where they're at?
No, I think that that's a good question. So there definitely is it with these guys. I think they're a lot of them are con artists, so they con themselves too. So
right. Yeah.
So they convince. They're really good at convincing other people things, and so they. It seems like you spend amount of time. The one reason why I think the more time they spend with us, the better, because eventually over time, their true nature will come out. And it's a residential program, so they're living with us. And so, I mean, I don't live with them, but I go there. They live there with another 120 other inmates.
More like a housing sort of thing,
um,
or is it like a housing community sort of a thing? Or
yeah. The modality that we use, the organization I work for, is called the Amity Foundation, and their big thing is called the therapeutic community. And it was not something I was familiar with before working with them. And so they call it the teaching and therapeutic community. And that is where, instead of say you're my therapist, and I come to see you, Chander, and you do a 45-minute or an hour session with me, and that's my treatment, right? In this particular modality, the community itself is the therapist. So so their whole
thing.
Huh?
They're like a stakeholder in the recovery, it sounds like.
Yeah, right. Their participation in the community is a big part of their recovery. Cool. And all the different elements. Just from we clean the community together, so like there's no janitors or anything. Both the staff and the student. So these guys are called students as well. So the students, which is cool. I think that's better than calling them inmates. So the students and I'm not a counselor. I'm actually called a demonstrator. So I'm supposed to be. Yeah, I'm supposed to be demonstrating through my behavior a healthier way of living. So and that was another thing that intrigued me too, was that it's an effective modality for sure, because I think it's true that people are more likely to change if they see other people in their behaviors, showing as an example. I can say certain things, I can speak and talk about certain things and provide knowledge and information. But it's where a lot of the changing actually takes place is when they can see you interacting with other people, your interpersonal skills, and then see how you deal with situations. That is where they can kind of do a lot of the learning, and where they can, develop and grow and work on their own skills.
For sure, and it seems like it provides them. I think providing the model of that community, that housing community, sort of is it probably helps to transition or transform into the society, because it's a step away from. It's not like being so stark from leaving prison and going into our public reality, which would be too shocking. I think that's a good way to kind of get them ready, in a lot of ways. And I love the meaning aspect. I was telling Keats last night about about my martial arts study, and how as students we would clean our training space before and after each class, and students. And so I'm familiar with what you're saying and that level, and I think that's wonderful.
Right, it plays a part. It definitely plays a part. I go into the rooms. I have to. I don't. I'm not like a big nitpicker, but I have to keep track of making sure the rooms are clean. Are they cleaning the room? Are they making sure things are organized? And I don't. I'll be honest. I'm not a big cleaner person myself. I like to keep things organized, though. I think that one's living space is extremely important, and you should have it a certain way. Yeah, that makes you feel comfortable. Makes you, hey, there's Keats. Hey,
Keats.
Hey, Keats.
Shalom. Shalom, shalom.
Yeah, we were just talking about you. So anyway, but yes, you're right. It plays a part. Cleaning somehow, because it's a physical aspect of it. I think if you can introduce something that people can do through action, with treatment, working on, it's not just like going to a class and learning about addiction, learning about criminal thinking and all this stuff, don't commit crimes, don't do drugs. It's more about like, well, let's show you through our behaviors. And one of the ways to show you is to make sure your room is clean, and make sure the community is clean. We do things together, and there's these little behavioral things that we do, and in addition to the more formal treatment, like we do a lot of group work. They're really big into group circles. So we have, circles like all the time, and to work on their issues. And as for me as a demonstrator, I have to do that too. I have to work. It's not just about them. Like in the traditional therapeutic setting, the therapist doesn't reveal anything about themselves.
Right.
They keep that professional boundary, and it's all about the patient. And I still have to have the professional boundary, but at the same time, I have to disclose my own personal struggles too. It's actually required of me. And so that is another element to that therapeutic community. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, did you have a hard time with that at first, or were you like all in?
No, I was all in, because that's something that I before I started working there, I was already using that as a means to help myself, because I was already attending peer-to-peer support groups, and that's the cornerstone of any peer-to-peer support group, is it's peer-to-peer. So it's about you and me, you Chander, me Derek, helping each other. You have something to give, I have something to give. You have something to learn, I have something to learn. It's the basis of the 12 steps. The 12 steps are about that, and in the 12 steps are not the only peer-to-peer group, but that's something that I bought into prior to working there.
That's cool. I think that's a wonderful approach. It's so more. I mean, it's more approachable for sure than a hierarchical approach, and it reminds people that you're human too, and then they don't. I feel. I mean, it's my perception that they probably would feel less inclined to lie to you, or to just work the system and really participate.
Right. Well, because that's what they're used to. They're used to and a lot of these guys have been in the system since they were kids.
Mm.
A lot of them were either from broken homes, and if they did stay with the family, then eventually they'll probably join a gang at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then after joining the gang, they'll most likely commit a crime, in which case they'll go to juvie and then they'll spend time there. So they've already been, by the time they get to us, they've already navigated through the legal system, spent a lot of time in it, not just in prison, but prior to that in juvenile hall and other places. So they're very familiar with people coming to them with what's called vested authority. So vested authority is like, say I'm a judge and I'm coming at you with my authority because of my position as a judge. Or if I'm coming at you as a police officer, I'm coming at you because of my title as a police officer, a lawyer, a counselor, even, whatever it is, that whatever job title I have, I use that title as a form of authority. And so they're very familiar with that, and they don't trust those vested authorities because
Right.
yeah, because they've always been pretty much screwed by it. So and a lot of them have been screwed over by their buddies too. Like a lot of the other gang members, they first think that they can trust them, and they feel closer to them than their own families, and they're that these are their homies and blah blah blah. But then, of course, they get stabbed in the back, turned in, and there's So there's a lot. The trust is a huge thing for them, and I understand. I've had my own issues with trust too, so I can kind of relate, but for different reasons, not the same reasons as they have, but for my own reasons. Trust has been a difficult thing, and a big part of my own story is overcoming that issue with trust.
Would you feel comfortable talking about that a little bit?
Sure.
What? Yeah, go ahead. Wherever
Sure.
you're at with it.
So, for me, probably the most traumatic thing was, I think it wasn't just this one particular instance, but I think there's I think if you look at our lives, we look at a lot of different things that happen in our lives. It's not just one experience, but there was this one experience that was the most dramatic, I think, as a child for me. And that was when my stepfather tried to rape me. And I was 9 years old, and my mother was the breadwinner of the family. And so she was on a business trip, and my stepfather was a stay-at-home dad, and he had a lot of, so-called physical ailments that he complained of, and he kept him from working. And, he was like a failed actor. He was a failed pretty much everything. And he had some good qualities to him for sure. But he had a lot of issues, and he had horrible temper, a lot of anger issues, had major depression issues. And, his interest in astrology actually kept me away from the occult. I didn't like astrology because of him. He was really big into doing astrological charts. And so for a long time, I just thought astrology or magic or anything mystical was just a load of horseshit. And so, partly because of my relationship with my stepfather. But yeah, I'd come home from school and I was playing with a cat, kind of a little bit rough with the cat. And the cat was scratching me. I don't know what he was going through. He was in his bathrobe, and he grabbed me and he forced me into their bedroom. And I was, protecting myself like this. And he pushed me up against their bed at the edge of it. And he was dry humping me. And it was very disgusting. It was a horrible experience. And I was, I know that you're into martial arts. And at that time I was taking karate classes. And so I wasn't doing a particular move or anything, but I just defended myself and I kicked him off me.
You did.
And so,
wow.
I sent him off me, and he went thrashing against the window pane. We lived on the second floor in Seattle, and he screamed at me, "You fucking little shit! You almost killed me!" And he left the room and he didn't try to do anything more. But as if it was my fault for defending myself, right?
Right.
But this was the person I saw the most. Huh?
I'm sorry. I just wondered if that came up later, then that was your fault, and was that like did he kind of pick at you after that about that? Curious.
No, it wasn't. Never. See, everything was all bottled up. He was a very repressed person. And that's the kind of that was the thing for me. Like growing up as a kid, that everything was, on the surface of things seemed to be like a fine, but I knew as a child that things were not fine, and that was one of the more dramatic experiences of that. And it was something for me. I didn't know how to process that as a 9-year-old. This was
right.
Right. This was the person that I grew up thinking was my father. I was confused because my biological father was involved in my life. He lived here in Los Angeles at the time, but he was still involved in my life. So I didn't call either my stepfather or my biological father dad or father. So this whole thing of distrust, not really. It caused a lot of traumatic issues for me growing up as a teenager. I had sexual desires for other girls, other teenage girls, and I didn't know what to do with them because I had this weird traumatic experience with my stepfather, and I just didn't know how to deal with that. So I had a lot of anger as well, and got into a lot of fights and a lot of problems, and I've had a lot of issues with my relationships, even to this day. And but fortunately, and I didn't tell anybody about it until I was 19. So 10 years later, I told my first major girlfriend and my best friend at the time. So I bottled it up the whole time. And then and then after I got into some major conflicts with my stepfather and just called it quits with him and that whole step family who I grew up with, right? I just stopped talking to them, and I never talked to him again. And he actually died 2 years ago, 2019, and I was quite fine with that. And my healing part of it was just being comfortable telling people about it. So of course I told my mother, I told my biological father, who had become really close to, when I came back to LA in '96, and the last 9 years of his life, my biological father, he and I became like best friends. So I had a really great relationship with him, and he helped me tremendously in a lot of ways. So my issues with trust, it was, so for me, I know that what has helped me is to not bottle things up. And my thing, I've known that what is a key way, a path for my the success of my soul, so to speak, right? Not the success of anything materialistically, but the success of me being able to feel good about my life, is being able to no longer hold things in such a way that is going to become a predator to my own insides, because that's what it became. So I definitely, so again, like, it's a different story, not all that different. Some of the guys that I've, worked with have also had sexual molestation or rape involved in their lives too. But there's differences, but yeah, the underlying problem with trust was definitely has been something that I have connected with them on, and getting them to open up. And when they see that I can open up and I talk about like what I just told you, and being comfortable telling, just anybody, strangers, it really, you could see it. I've seen it happen many, many times, where if people aren't maybe willing to go as far as to reveal a dirty secret like that, they're able to reveal a little bit more than what they're used to. And if you can do that, yeah, it really helps to break down their walls, and that's really, I think, very important.
Well, for sure. I mean, you're expressing a level of vulnerability that it sings to the soul. And I am a very open-hearted person, and yet my heart's still open, as you were saying, telling your story. And so I can only imagine that it has to touch someone who's never even felt that sort of a connection with someone, probably, or not enough. And so the opportunity to be vulnerable with them, I think, gives a strength to everybody. And clearly, you're sharing this with me. We haven't met before, and the whole everybody who's here, and you seem so comfortable with being completely genuine and honest.
Right. Well, I know that it not only helps me by doing it, I know it can help others, and that was the one of the main things that I really gained from my biological father was that's how he was. So
Nice.
I was, those last 9 years of his life, he died the same year my son was born, unfortunately, but I'm really grateful, but I'm really grateful for those 9 years that I had with him because I could see him doing it. And again, it's that whole thing of demonstration of when you see people actually actively, physically doing it in their behaviors, demonstrating what you're talking about. That's where it becomes very effective, because it's no longer just about it wouldn't just be like, just say as I do, don't do as I do. It's actually do as I do, because I'm doing it.
Oh, I think that's awesome. I reverse engineer that sort of a process through maybe you've experienced NLP in a therapeutic setting, but it's sort of that same sort of a thing. If modeling behavior that you want to become, or that you basically like that, and then so to give to put that in reverse and to give them a model, it helps them to get clear on what they want. I'm sure, like the desire to be better or to change is pretty vague. But then when they see a model enacting it and living it, implementing it in their lives, they, it gives them somewhere to go with it.
Right, exactly. It becomes a real thing. It's no longer just an idea. It becomes something that's real. Right, definitely.
Derek, when you opened up after being bottled up for so long, I'm sure it wasn't easy to do it. But what were you met with as a response from the people you told?
Well, the first time I did it, it was when I was 19. Like my first girlfriend meant a lot to me, for sure. And she was very special in a lot of ways. But she wasn't exactly someone who had done a lot of work on herself. And she was young too. I was 19. She was 19. So, I don't really think she really was ready to process something like that, So she didn't, she wasn't negative per se, but she knew my stepfather, because she had met him. I think we even gone on a trip together. So I think she was a bit conflicted. And then my best friend, though, he had also gone through a similar experience, actually a few of them, and worse than I had. He had actually he had worser experiences. So he was that. What's that?
Did you know that before you opened up to him, or was that kind of a
no?
surprise?
It actually helped him to kind of share with me.
Awesome.
And we had he was definitely an even a more scarred person than I am, and he unfortunately I've lost contact with him, but he a genuine soul, just really a lot of pain carrying around with him, and he was good. He was very empathetic, and that helped, and we had a good friendship for a few years, but then he just kind of, everyone kind of lost connection with him. But the years later, when I was 26 or so, 26, 20, was before my son was born. So I was 26, is when I told my mom. And my mom is super sweet. She's very loving, very kind-hearted woman, and a great mom. And
wow.
She was, of course, very emotional. So she was just very distraught and very upset. And she had also a lot of anger too, because she had divorced him 2 years later, and years earlier, about 6 years earlier. So she was very, very emotional about it. And she even told me, she says, you know, I remember when I came back from the business trip that I was wondering why the window pane had these cracks in the panel, right? And she, you know, she was just wondering where that came from because she had noticed it when she had come back, and it was from that when I kicked him off me, it
Oh.
slammed me against it, and that's when he screamed at me, you know, because if he had gone through the window, of course he would have fallen 2 flights and probably would have died. That's
I
why
was
he
getting
screamed.
that in your image, yeah. So it
Right?
cracked. He was hard. I mean, he wasn't just like, I mean, it was a hard.
Yeah, I was a feisty little kid. You know, I was a 9-year-old. I was taking karate classes, and I was getting into a lot of fights at school. So, and I was upset. I mean, there was this disgusting beast on top of me who I thought I could trust. You know, so I kicked him really hard. And so when she had come, so I was one. I remember that was one of the things that she told me was that like, I remember coming back from that business trip and just wondering where did these cracks in the wood panel, where did that come from? And my biological father, of course, he was very angry, and he was my biological father too. Unlike my stepfather, would never get angry. You know, he never ever. I rarely ever saw him lose his temper, and I always admired him for that. I always wished that I could be like that. You know, he just found ways to adjust how his emotions so he wouldn't lose it. You know, and he got angry. He got very, and it was one of the few times I actually saw him get very angry. And you know, we discussed like, what should I do? Should I confront him? You know, and for me at this point, I had ended my relationship with my stepfather and that whole step family. And for other reasons, mostly related to how they treated my mother horribly. And so I felt at that point, what was most important was just telling other people about it in a way that would be therapeutic, because I knew that that would help me, and it did. And it was extremely healing and liberating to do that. And at that point, I just really didn't feel the necessity to confront him about it. To do that, I also, again, like my stepfather, have had a violent streak, and so I was concerned about possibly it turning and becoming violence. So I just felt like it wouldn't really resolve anything, and I just knew him, and things were already bad, so I just didn't think that there would be anything that would come of it, you know. And I think it just was something that I felt that's the way I wanted to go with that situation, you know.
That's a very tricky spot, isn't it? Like when you're like, what do you do with that? Are you compassionate, or do you have do you have something that needs to stand up in some way, and where does that come from? That's a really tough place to be.
Right. You have to decide. You have to figure out with yourself, like what is it that you're going to do that you're going to feel best about? What's going to make you feel like, in terms of your healing from that scar, from that traumatic experience? What is it that you're going to do that's going to make you feel best about it? And so I think it's really up to each person and the dynamics of the circumstances. So if the circumstances were different, possibly a confrontation, I think maybe would have been good. But it didn't feel right at the time, and it never did. I just never felt the need to confront him over that. And so, yeah, it was a decision that I just decided to make, but I knew I could no longer keep it bottled up and keep it like a dirty secret anymore.
For sure.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow, that's just, so many things. And I think about the issue of forgiveness, in that story. And it's like, when we need to forgive, it sounds so trite when people say it's not about forgiving the other person, it's about you. And that's so true, and it's evident in what you were just saying. Well, yeah. Whatever level it may be, even if that forgiveness means resolving it in a confrontational way, but it's forgiving. I don't know. To me, it's you're forgiving yourself in the situation, and not blaming yourself, for taking on things that you shouldn't. And anyway, you know what I mean? Forgiveness.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think
within.
For me, forgiveness was definitely something that because of the fact that when I defended myself, he's screamed at me and said, "You fucking little shit, you almost killed me."
That pissed me off. I bet it did you too.
Because you tell that to a 9-year-old, and of course I take that and put it towards myself,
Yes.
Oh, this is my fault. Like, what was I doing? And never really, I don't remember ever really consciously thinking about it, but I know on a subconscious level, on a level that I would unconsciously taking on a certain amount of guilt, just a lot, I think mostly confusion. But, in terms of, I think for me, in terms of the forgiveness thing for him on my part, I think I'm not a big believer in just forgiving just to forgive. I don't think it should be done just because it's expected of you, and that's sort of like the spiritual thing to do is just forgive people, right? And I'm not a Christian. And so, I'm a big believer in love, but love doesn't mean you have to go around forgiving everyone.
Right.
Maybe for some people it does. Maybe for some people, love means forgiveness. Maybe they have to forgive themselves, forgive other people, and that's their biggest expression of love. And it doesn't play a big part in my life, and it didn't play a big part in this relationship that I had with him. I definitely feel good. It's about apologizing and holding myself accountable, holding other people accountable. But I think while forgiveness may not be a big thing, I think understanding is. And so what's helped me is not necessarily forgive him for what he did, because I never have. And I still don't to this day. I don't forgive him for what he did. I don't feel good. I wouldn't feel good about forgiving him for doing that, because I just don't feel like that's a healthy, for me, it's not a healthy thing to do. Now, understanding why he is, I think understanding,
I have to side with you on that. I think understanding over forgiveness in this case.
Yeah, I think so I don't think it's not like going like the other extreme and just seeing him as a monster. He did something monstrous. He had a side to him that was monstrous and disgusting and horrible. But I think understanding that he was a very disturbed person and had never really resolved a lot of his underlying issues, that's helped me tremendously. I think that has helped me more than forgiveness is understanding and seeing what kind of person he was. Because then if I can understand what kind of person he was and what were his issues, it can help teach me how not to be that way. How can I come in when I'm, having issues with life, disappointments, bitterness, just, a number of different things. How can I deal with it in a healthier way? Because to me, he didn't deal with that stuff in a healthy way. So that to me, where I do a lot of growing and healing from that situation. So again, I think that's understanding is the key, not necessarily forgiveness.
Thank you. Thanks for elaborating on that, because as soon as I said, I was like, it sounds like forgiving the other person is the thing. But what I was going at is that inner forgiveness, that you forgiving yourself, that 9-year-old boy, for whatever whatever you took on at that time. Forgiving yourself, I guess, and understanding that people are not their behavior necessarily. Or I'm not putting words, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I feel that people are not their behavior. They are, they behave, but they're people inside, and it doesn't mean you have to be nice to them. Doesn't mean you have to participate in their lives, but it gives you the, keep your power and stay distant.
Right.
Dude, wow. So when did you start realizing that you had to take that and start helping others?
Well, like in that, okay, so Well, in that specific situation, I knew that it would help me by, sharing that with other people. But in terms of becoming a counselor, that came years later.
Mm.
That came about when I was basically at the end of my drug addiction years, and had stopped doing crystal methamphetamine after a number of years, and had stopped doing alcohol too. And so those were rough times, and I never finished school. I was always pursuing my creative endeavors. So I was
Mm.
always, I was a filmmaker before, and then I was writing stories, and then publishing my stories, my novels, and short story collection. So I was doing. I loved school. I always loved school, but I did struggle in certain areas, math and science being the big ones. So I never finished school. So I was always doing like odd jobs. Worked in movie theaters for a long time, became a manager of a movie theater, but
Cool.
lost that job.
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, but it was definitely lower. I was doing like lower income jobs, and so
Mm.
and then and so I lost that job because of my drug addiction. So I was trying to figure out, well, what kind of career to have or what kind of jobs, and I was just tired of doing customer service jobs. So I wanted to find a skill set that I could use to get other kinds of jobs. So
Mhm.
the two things that kind of kept that uh, came at me was accounting and being a drug and alcohol counselor. So I went to school and started taking some.
Accounting and accountability.
Yeah,
Accounting and accountability.
right there you go. Yeah, and so it was. I took a group dynamics class, and the teacher of that class is he's also a painter, and all of his paintings are on the covers of my books and on my website. Yeah, he is an amazing painter and a very underappreciated artist. He does these abstract expressionist paintings, beautiful works. And but I met him. He was my teacher at school, and he taught a group dynamics class, and that blew my mind. That's where I was like really just immediately took hold of me. My interest in this whole thing of counseling, of helping other people, was that class. And then it was just the other classes I was taking. It just seemed very exciting to me, this field of counseling, of helping people with drugs. And we're talking about drug addiction. And it just, it was just something that really spoke to me. And then I did some internships and in Skid Row. My first internship was in a place in Skid Row, and that was interesting. And so I definitely, yeah,
I said, I bet Skid Row.
yeah. Well,
Amazing.
I don't know if I don't think you've been to LA recently, right?
No, it's been a while.
Yeah, the whole city has become Skid Row.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's sad. It's very sad. But right now, the whole entire city of Los Angeles is basically tents everywhere, and so
Mm.
it's horrendous. It's horrible. There's definitely certainly things about it which I love this city, but the homeless population is just out of control. And but yeah, that's it. Being a drug and alcohol counselor it was something that was very appealing to me. And I was like, hey, this is something I can do. I probably won't make that much money at it, but I'll make enough to pay the bills, and I can still do my writing. I can still do this whole love chaos thing, whatever that was at the time. I didn't really know what to do with it at that time, but I knew I liked it, this concept, and I was trying to see how it could apply to my life. So it was yeah, and I'm kind of at the point, a 5 year point of being a drug and alcohol counselor, and that's when they say that's when a lot of counselors have burnout, and I can see why. Being a counselor is not an easy thing. Uh,
No.
yeah, helping people, huh?
Especially when you care.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I definitely see a lot of people working in the field who stopped caring simply because it just was too rough on them to care. You know.
That, I mean, did you start to think longevity was going to be an issue for you?
Yeah, I think it's something. What I knew early on. One of the things that made me decide to be a counselor was that I realized that how important my sobriety was. I could not relapse. I could not go back to drinking alcohol. I could not go back to doing drugs. So, and I knew how hard that would be. And so I realized, I thought, well, besides enjoying it and helping other people, I knew that it would be a way for me to stay sober, because in the lifestyle of being a sober person, you really have to make it a priority in your life, like every day. You have to really make it something that it's one of your main things in life. And so when you're being a drug and alcohol counselor, it's your job. And so one of the best ways to help people is by making sure that you're taking care of yourself and you're staying sober. So
support
that's kind of like,
then too.
That's it's something that I've kind of equated counseling with my sobriety in a lot of ways. Like I don't want to rely on my job as keeping me sober, because that's unhealthy. I don't think that's good to do, because I have my recovery as a separate thing from my job. But the job does play a factor in my sobriety for sure.
That's I think an important point, because if you start to depend upon that outside source, then that can crumble. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Right.
Man,
it is a job. Yeah. But yeah, it is at the end of the day, as great as it can be, it is a job, and then one has to kind of remind oneself it is a job, and there's these professional boundaries that are there for sure.
Do you feel like in your books, do you feel like that allows people access to a part of you that they can't get because of the professional boundaries?
Oh, huh. So like what people, so like say the students at my job, like for example, like I can't be friends with them on Facebook or social media. I can't give them my personal phone number. I can't be friends with them. So I can't, that has to be that professional line there. Right. And so in my work with my writing with Love Chaos, I certainly can become friends with people. It's different, yeah. So it is true. It is a different dynamic, for sure, that I can have a personal connection with people through Love Chaos that I can't have as a professional counselor. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So Love Chaos, when did that come to your consciousness, I suppose?
That was 2014, and that was when I was it was prior to me becoming a counselor, going back to school I spent 2 years at school to be a drug and alcohol counselor. And it was something that it was 2014. I was still struggling with alcohol. So when I actually created Love Chaos, I think it's important for people to know, and I hope I haven't misled people that like as soon as Love Chaos, I wrote that book Love Chaos, and it published it. And again, not many people knew about it, but it wasn't as if, oh, I'm all cured and I'm all great and I'm, this Love Chaos saved me and all this other stuff. It's like, not at all. I published it. I intentionally published it on the spring equinox, and it was what was this? Yeah, and it was March 21st, and I was still struggling with alcohol. I hadn't quit alcohol until the fall of that year of 2014, until September, late September. So it was more just something that I needed. Otherwise, I would have kept spiraling out of control. I would have, the alcohol was just causing a lot of personal damage in my life. And I most likely would have gone back to the hard drugs. And I just needed something. And again, as I mentioned earlier, like none of the previous traditions, as much as I respect other traditions and other belief systems, it just none of them worked for me. It was like we were talking about the keyhole and the key
Mm-hmm.
that into the keyhole. None of their keys worked for me. So I wanted to come up with something myself, and I was inspired by William Blake, and who decided to create his own system, and Austin Osman Spare and others, and I just felt like, well, why not? Just make my own thing, and have some kind of very loose framework to have as a guiding principle. Because I realized that I needed to have some kind of guidance.
Yes. One that was genuine for you. Yeah. Did you just say Austin? Is he the Rainbow Machine guy, or am I thinking somebody else?
Oh no, Austin Osman Spear.
Oh,
He,
Austin Osman Spare. Please,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. He was a big. He still continues to be an enormous inspiration to me. Very individualistic. One of the most individualistic people you will come across, and so yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, Love Chaos was just another inspiration was my biological father. Before he died in 2005, he had written this play. It's a great play. It's on my website, and it's called "Waiting for Amanda." And the two main characters are loosely based on me and his brother. And I was at a couple years before he wrote it. I was madly in love with this woman that I worked with, and it was an unrequited love affair on my part.
Oh.
I was friends with her. I was friends, but she didn't return the love, and I was very tormented. And his brother also had a similar experience. So the play is about unrequited love, about men who can't seem to get over these feelings, and a lot of other stuff too. Really, it's a great play. It's a really brilliant play, and I highly recommend people check it out. But in the play, and it was something he told me before, was he came up with this notion of the church of many doubts. And he always kind of joked with me. He said, like, if he ever started a religion, it would be called that, the Church of Many Doubts. And so my dad sort of showed me, a lot of things that were a huge influence on me, and one of them was agnosticism. And so he really was very persuasive in his agnosticism, and really in embracing doubt, and how a person can live a very fulfilling life as an agnostic. That it didn't need to be a passive or a confused thing, as I think maybe some people think it is, but it can be a very passionate thing. That doubt didn't need to be this crippling thing or a negative thing, but it could actually be quite healthy. And so that was a big thing in how it played into me creating Love Chaos. I was really definitely owed him a lot.
Wow. And I hear what you're saying about the agnostic thing. I think that people often consider it sort of based on what you're saying about the doubt, and they consider it maybe a cop out, or some people might. And I think that's the same as that liminal space you were in when you were still involved with alcohol, but you were in that point between it controlling your life and you being in control, right? And that point isn't much talked about in addiction worlds, especially with unrequited love, and I believe that's a style of addiction.
So you're saying that the similarity between addiction and go ahead.
Yeah. So, well, I jumped. I do that a lot, but I was going from agnosticism to that liminal part of where you were at, when you were quitting alcohol but still drinking, or you were but still drinking, and then also then comparing those things then to the unrequited love thing, and again, not putting anything on you, but experience, that's almost an addiction feeling.
Well, I think that's how a lot of people view agnosticism, is this sort of on. So it's like confused, and that's not how I practice my agnosticism. It's not a confused state. I think in that point where I had quit hard drugs and I was struggling with alcohol, it was more struggling, and I was in a lot of pain, uh, and I was I was using drugs before. I was using alcohol as a way to mask that pain and not deal with
Mhm.
my. And so that I could see that as being very similar to unrequited love. I think people who hang on to a love for someone that maybe has long been, they're not returning the love. It's something that again is like there's definitely a form of denial. I don't feel agnosticism is in the same realm as those things, though. It can be for
Oh,
some people,
well,
but
actually, what I meant, let me clarify that, is that the cop out. Okay, so taking what you were saying about how people see that maybe or that doubt in agnosticism and perceive that as a cop out, as you were saying, sort of a passive way to kind of avoid the issue. It sounds like.
right, yeah.
But people will call that state of liminality where you were at with your recovery. They could say the same thing about that, but it's not. I mean, that place is a very valid place to be. It's not like you're. Uh, it's not like you're avoiding the recovery, right? And you're not avoiding the question in agnosticism. You're approaching it in a different
Well,
way.
I should probably explain what it is. This kind of agnosticism, the kind that I practice, is that. So, like for example, I practice magic, right? I
Mm,
do magic rituals every day, and
yeah.
sometimes I do big ones. And my most recent book was based on a big one, on a 6-day ritual. So I put a lot of effort in time and energy into doing these rituals. And a big part of these rituals have to deal with building a relationship with these entities that are basically invisible. I can't see them, I can't hear them, they're not physically there, right? Now I'm spending so much time and so much energy and so much intent and so much emotions and so much of my thoughts and work and into these things in a relationship with these entities that may not even exist, right? So for my agnosticism is this what I feel is very strongly about is that I feel comfortable with the possibility that these entities may actually exist, but I'm also comfortable with the fact that they may not exist, that they may just be figments of my imagination. So basically it's being comfortable with different possibilities, and having these, being able to be like, oh, okay, and I know it's hard, and I think that how it worked for me with addiction, not just with addiction, but other areas of my life. With addiction, with most addicts, in fact, I'm pretty sure with all addicts, one of the beautiful things about being an addict is that you can go to your drug and it's always going to make you, well, it should make you high, right? Most of the time. And so it's, or at least there's certain the level of certainty. You take the drug, like there's certainty there. There's like, you're going to get this high. I wake up every morning. Very first thing I would do was hit that crystal meth pipe. That was my ritual. That was my ritual right back then. Was waking up in the morning, hitting that crystal meth pipe, lighting the bottom, twirling it, seeing it melt, and then so forth. And so,
That's I see. That's not just smoking crack and running on your way. I mean, whatever that's a thing. It's a ritual of sorts. Yeah.
oh yeah. And so it was something that, but it was something I always knew. Like I knew in my mind, I wake up in the morning and there's the crystal, and I always made sure I would never run out of crystal. Right.
Mm.
And as an alcoholic, I would make sure I would never run out of alcohol. I always had alcohol there. So where this agnosticism helps a lot, I think, with addiction, at least for me, is that you become comfortable with uncertainty. So you're comfortable being in that situation of existence where you're not always having to be dependent on something like a substance or a behavior, right? Because addicts are dependent on that thing that they're addicted to. So if you can find ways of living your life where you're not dependent on these things anymore, they're no longer there, then you're living life as it comes at you, and you're okay with it. You're fine with it. And you could, and again, I have magic rituals that I do every day, and that gives me, I do have certain things in my life where there is certainty. It's not just like letting things happen, whatever. I think that that's the key to living this lifestyle, is that it's a balance of having some level of order with the chaos.
Nice. Yeah. So you're not just getting swept away with it, but I dig that, man. I really grok that. I feel much the same way in that, I've been forced into that, but life has actually, given me a lot of that perspective. And I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, that's,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, did you replace your ritual, morning ritual, with something else?
What's that?
I don't want to derail you from the thought you might have had, but I was wondering did you replace the ritual of waking up and smoking? Did you replace that with a different sort of a ritual, like a more positive sort of a thing?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Every morning I wake up and I meditate. I do a certain things I won't. I'll disclose and share a lot of what I do, but there's certain things I won't. And so I do a certain thing with an item, and I do a certain thing every morning with an item that my son gave to me, something he got when he was on a trip to Mexico. So I do that every morning. Then I meditate. Then I do a breathing exercise that's joined with a prayer. Prayer has become very important to me recently, and I do a form of prayer meditation and ritual. So I do a prayer with intent every morning, and again with it's with these entities that I have relationships with, and which I talked about in my most recent book. So I'm okay with letting people know the entities I work with, and some people may not like the entities I work with, and I'm fine. And I have certain reasons for why I work with them, and I have a very intimate relationship with them. And for me, my magic is having a relationship with these entities is maybe one of the most important things.
All right, now we're stepping into territory I really like, the woo land, but the genuine woo land.
Okay.
So, and you mentioned your recent book a couple of times. That's the Grimoire for Modern Times. Is that right? Did I get that right?
It's called The End of the World, a Love Chaos Grimoire for the Survival and Evolution of Human Beings. So it's a book. Yeah, it was a book that was based on a 6-day ritual that I did from March 6th to March 11th in 2020 that I had been planning since 2019. I had actually been planning to do a multiple day ritual for years, but just waiting for the right intention for it, like, something big enough for it. Then I started to get into more recent works, in the whole sort of called grimoire revival, which has been spearheaded by, Dr. Skinner and Jake Stratton Kent and others like that. And
the rewriting or the representing of old grimoires and republishing them or whatever.
They're kind of placing their importance in the history of the occult, and really. Yeah, and really showing, because in the last 20, 30 years, a big part of the occult is sort of looking back at our past and really trying to be honest with it in ways where we see how things really were. And because what happened was, after the sort of like late 1800s with the, Theosophy, and then the Golden Dawn, especially the Golden Dawn, which led into Crowley, and with Thelema and the OTO and stuff, and all these different orders that sprung up, is that they were based on certain ideas that I feel like I'm not really against them, like big time, like a lot of sort of modern day people are. I think there's definitely value there, but their prime sort of cornerstone was like it was the Kabbalah. And the Kabbalah was really, prime for them. other aspects to ceremonial magic. And so in the last 20, 30 years, mostly because of those two authors I mentioned, we found that the Western magical tradition it goes way back, and that there has been this tradition that is not necessarily it's definitely not a formal tradition, but goes back prior to Christianity, goes back to pagan times, and it shows, definitely a certain level of consistency. So this whole practice of of magic was something I was kind of not really into until the last couple of years, and so that played a big part in the 6-day ritual that I did. But the purpose was that I in 2019, again, this is before the coronavirus, 2019, and people can remember what was on a lot of people's minds, as it should have been, was climate change. And as a father to a teenage boy, I was very concerned about our future, and it was something that I felt like if I was going to do a major ritual, it had to be for something more than just my own self-interest. That I wanted to do a ritual that was, if it was ambitious, but who cares? It's like I cared, like I wanted to do something where, again, it's this whole thing of doing a practice where you're working with these things that might be invisible, it may not work or whatever. But the last 10 years of my life showing that definitely it worked on my personal level. I wanted to experiment and try to see if I could extend that to something outside of myself. And so this book was based on that 6-day ritual.
Sweet. That's so cool. And it shows, again, your that comfort of agnosticism that you were speaking of comes through in what you were just saying about Blavatsky and Crowley, and how you can view them as valuable in their historical contributions and things, and there's something truth there, but you're also understanding that they had they were who they were and whatever. Yeah. But you don't have to hold either one of those things against the value of who they were.
Right. Yeah, cool. I know some people nowadays really despise Crowley. Some people don't like Spare, and and they don't like Kenneth Grant, and some people who I respect their opinion and stuff. And I'm really not one. I definitely feel like there's things about Crowley that I don't like, for sure. His treatment of women, for example, for the most part. I mean, there were examples of his treatment of women were good, I think, but there was a lot of examples that it was pretty bad. He was very abusive. He could be very abusive. But again, going back to what you were talking about, talking about my stepfather, I think understanding Crowley, you have to understand the whole person, and I think that's a key thing to take away from him. But yeah, that whole, people like Gordon White he kind of likes to shit on that whole thing, and other people, yeah. I understand where they're coming from, but I'm not really interested in shitting on Crowley and all these other people of their time. It's what they did, and I think they left us some valuable things, but we can definitely, discover new things. We definitely do not have to be beholden to them, for sure. Not anybody. You don't have to be beholden to the current occult scene either. We don't have to be writing books that seem like they came out of a university. I think that's been one of the faults of modern occult publishing is, and some of them I really respect and admire, is that they want to write books that would be accepted by professors, and it seems they're very academic, and there's lots of, I always want to make sure that there's tons of references to this, that, and whatever, and accurate and stuff like that. And I think it's good that the academic world is taking the occult more seriously, but I'm not so sure if the occult will ever be taken super seriously by the academic world anyway. I don't think the occult world should try too hard to become accepted by them, and I definitely wanted to make it with my books. I didn't want it to be none of them are academic books at all.
Cool. So you made it like it, take it or leave it, huh?
Well, I wanted to make them more personal, and so, the occult practices. I'm not of the school, the Dr. Skinner school. I'm not going to put a doctor in front of my name and try to make it, pass it along as if it's a PhD thesis or anything like that. I don't think that when we're talking about magic, when we're talking about magic ritual and the occult, I think it deals far more with the imagination than with it's not a science. I don't believe that magic is a science. I have a lot of love and respect for the sciences, for the hard sciences, for the soft sciences. And what we do with magic is not a science. It's a practice that can be very effective, but that doesn't mean to me it's not a science. And I don't think we should try to pretend that it is.
I agree, Derek. I don't want to take a step off into a direction that we could go down because it's off topic too much, but it's related. Is that Chinese medicine is very much the same way now that it's becoming more accepted with insurance companies and things like that. The instruction of the medicine is so westernized. It's scientifically reproduced, and it's lost a lot of the magic and the poetry and the occultism, if you will. And I think those are important parts of it.
Right, that's interesting. So you're saying I never really thought about that. So through its attempts to become accepted and taken by insurance companies and so forth, it's in that process it's lost a little bit of its, as you said, like magic or its art.
Absolutely, that was my experience in school, and they were in the process of becoming accredited as I was attending, and so they were in that liminal space between, the teachers who had the real stuff and they were giving it to you, and then the teachers who were just like, nope, you got to get these numbers, and because you got to get it right for the test, because if you fail the test then you got to go back and take the test, and if you don't pass the test you can't be an acupuncturist. So instead of just teaching you the darn thing, and
right. Yeah, it's like it had been invaded by the whole standardized testing thing, which like a lot of our public schools have been invaded by. This whole, we have a standard that we need you to meet, and
Can you imagine standardized testing in occult practices? That would suck. Did you? So the grimoire, is that like your own? Is that your own practices expanded, or are you taking from older sources and renewing them, or?
Oh, so that 6-day ritual that I did.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was something that I incorporated things I had been doing for a long time with some new things. So most of my work that I had done up until that point was dealing with invocation magic. So it's almost like theurgy. So it was about, in many cases, a union with myself with this entity, right? And invocation. So bringing the qualities of this entity within myself. In a marriage with that sort of invocation work was sex magic or chaos magic, which is basically taking a statement of intent and using that, turning it into a sigil, and then doing a number of different things, basically spending the whole day, so that by the time I got to the point where I'm going to what's called charge the sigil, right? So the sigil is like an artwork. I take the letters. So there's different ways to do it. And there's the way I would do it would be eliminate all repeating letters from the statement of intent. So the statement of intent would be, I'm going to quit alcohol, right? And that's what I did. All my addictions, I used magic ritual to quit those addictions, from alcohol to crystal meth to cigarettes to a number of things. Also, with my anger, I still struggle with it, but I certainly have gotten better with that. Other areas of my life, relationships with people and so forth. And so I use magic to work on myself, to better myself. I
identify with that.
And that's what I think people can do with it. I think a lot of times people use magic to get things, like I use magic to, which is fine. I don't want to get too negative about that. So, but anyway, what I've been doing was this, and so I charged the sigil basically with orgasm, and by that point of orgasm is when I drop the statement of intent down into my subconscious. I was a believer in that notion that at the point of orgasm, your conscious mind and your unconscious mind meet. And that's
Yes.
when and so that's when you can drop that statement of intent down in there. And then I would do other things as well. So that was something I'd always been doing for a long time. But this 6-day ritual included evocation. So where I was evoking entities.
Hang on a sec. Before you go there, when you were talking about the sigil making, I interrupted you. Could you continue? You're saying, like, if I want to quit alcohol, that statement, you would eliminate the repeating letters, you say?
Yeah. So this is a big thing in chaos magic or sex magic, however you want to look at it, is a big thing in chaos magic. Phil Hine and all them were big into this, and it was based on, in large part, mostly what Austin Osman Spare did and his work with sigil magic, and but primarily the chaos magicians were the big ones who pushed this notion of doing. You have a desire, a statement of intent, like I will quit alcohol, and so all the letters that are repeating, so you're not going to cancel I and W. Oh, but there's the second I, so I'm going to cancel that one out. Then L, the second L, I'm going to cancel that one out. So whatever's left will be what you have left. And you take each letter and distort it. And I have a certain method that I use for distorting the letters, and I turn it into like a little drawing artwork, and then that drawing with the letters that are the key thing is whatever you do, it can't seem to be relatable to the original statement of intent. It has to be like
that's a trick of the conscious mind or something.
Yes, exactly. Right. So it has to be this like a drawing, basically. And so that's your statement of intent, and you have to charge it. And there's different ways to charge it, right? To get it to your subconscious, so it can become a part of who you are. So it can go down. Because what I realized, like with positive thinking is very powerful, of course, but it can kind of remain on that level of the conscious mind. Now, I think that you can definitely get it into your subconscious too, by just repeating to yourself, going to the mirror and saying that, I'm going to be happy today. I'm going to be happy today. I'm going to be happy today.
Darn it, people like me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, gosh darn it, people like me, So, I think that's powerful. Positive thinking is powerful, but I always like the idea of going, how can I contact the subconscious mind? Because I seem to be right. We're all kind of motivated by these subconscious drives. And I'm not like a big Freudian, but I like a lot of what he talks about. And Nietzsche was big into this too, and and Dostoevsky as well. And I really felt,
I didn't know Dostoevsky was.
He explored it for sure. Like Freud talked about a lot of what he did. He was influenced by Dostoevsky, big time, especially the Brothers Karamazov, which to me is one of the greatest works of literature of all time. The Brothers Karamazov. I love that book. I'm a big Dostoevsky. Yeah. Yes, if people want to read really great, intense Russian literature, read the Brothers Karamazov. That's one of the great books of all time.
I have an affinity for Russian stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a story about a father who's murdered. He's murdered, and they don't know who killed him. It's one of his sons. So we get I forget how it's figured out. It's one of them. But so he has 3 sons, and he also has, I think, a stepson or something. I think there's like 4 basically, but there's 3 main characters. And each of the 3 sons represents an aspect to Dostoevsky's personality. And so he does a lot. At the time, people thought Dostoevsky was like a psychologist because he really plumbed the depths of these characters really, really well. And he was a big influence on Freud, for sure. And Nietzsche was too, and Nietzsche as well. So all these guys and a lot of other people, Spare, of course, deal with the subconscious. They all understand that what's going on in the conscious world is hugely, hugely affected by what's going on in the unconscious. And I definitely I tend to go that way. I feel like that's true. And so I saw like, oh, magic is a way to do it. So like instead of being a victim to my subconscious, how can I reverse it? How can I reverse it so that I'm now basically telling my subconscious what? I'm not the victim of my subconscious. I'm the one in control, telling my subconscious what to do. So for me, I viewed, that's how I got really into magic, was I saw that magic was a way to do it. Well, magic, these different techniques of working with these entities, spending all day with them, doing all these different things, was a way to access that subconscious. And then at the culmination of the ritual, at the end of the day, was dropping that statement of intent down into the subconscious. Was the way to do it. So for
And
most
letting
of
go consciously, just it's no longer in your conscious mind. You're just like done.
well, that's what a lot of people say, and that's what Spare was. Spare was a big believer in that. You should never even think about your statement of intent anymore. Just erase it from your conscious mind. That he was big.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So Spare was a big believer in that you had to eliminate the statement of intent. So that statement of intent earlier, which is I will quit alcohol, don't think about that. Don't ever think about that. So that's what I would say most people do when it comes to these sigil work.
This is as far as I've gotten with sigils, and Western magic is fairly new to me, but I've done invocation a lot, but sigils are fairly new, and that's where I'm at. So I'm dying to just shut up and listen to you talk now about this one.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that so what I was going to say though is that it didn't work for me. I didn't want to forget about the statement of intent. I wanted to continue to be a part of my conscious mind. So because what I felt would be effective was combine the magic ritual with therapy, like going to see a therapist and talking about my addiction, going to peer-to-peer support groups, learning about addiction, and all these other things. So I didn't think it was all about the subconscious. I felt that the conscious mind had to have a part in this too. And so that's what I did. So it wasn't a case of where the magic ritual was the only thing that worked. A lot of other things worked too. They all worked together. Yeah. So, but not everybody, a lot of people say that if you do work with sigils, you need to forget about it. Don't think about your statement of intent. Allow it to play around in your subconscious mind. Let it come out through that way. And I see the argument for that for sure.
Well, I like your perspective though too, Code, because yeah, there's I may have had some success with the sigil work I've done, but in the same way, man, it's like I feel like there's an intention that I want to hold onto for some reason. So do you do it just by, well, how do you sidestep that then dropping into the subconscious?
Well, I think that it's important not to obsess about it too much. So I think dealing with it in your conscious mind is one thing, but if I'm going to be going to be thinking all the time about I'm going to quit alcohol, I could become a bit. Then it can it doesn't allow it to play around in the subconscious mind. It's hovering around here in my conscious mind all the time, and it's always just sort of in the way of me living my life. It's just always there. So there's something you have to. I see Keith says forget it. Yeah. So
I've been tuning out from the chat. Sorry, chat people. I'm engrossed in my.
I saw it there, and but yeah, you definitely want to make it so that it takes root. I have to have it ghost in a way. Yes. I think each person has to find out what works best for you, and so I think that in regards to I will quit alcohol, I think that's something you probably shouldn't erase from your conscious mind. you probably want to have that still there, and you're dealing with it on a conscious level. That's something that you probably should have in your conscious mind. Now, let's say, let's say like you don't have a car, and you really need a car, and it's really important. Like you need to get a car to get to your job. You got this new job, but it's like 20 miles away, right? And there's no public transportation. You need a vehicle to get there. So let's say I do a statement of intent that I will get a good, affordable car, right? Or just a car. I will get a car. So you take that statement of intent, right, and do all the things that you do in order to get that car. Um, that's something that you don't necessarily have to be thinking about consciously, I suppose. Like it's not something that like as an alcoholic, you really should be dealing with your alcoholism, on a conscious level. But if you need to get a car, or you need to get a job, or I need to get money to pay rent, all these, things that are more materialistic and not necessarily deal with the personal self. I think those are those are probably things that a person could forget about and just sort of like eliminate for your mind, and just as soon as it comes into your conscious mind, you can just kind of like block it out. Just like, no, you're staying down. You're staying down there in the basement, in the subconscious. You're down there. So yeah, I suggest you if you're interested in that, Chander, definitely look. The main go-to book for chaos magic and dealing with sigils is Phil Hines' Condensed Chaos.
Oh, he's new to me. I love Phil Hines. Okay, Condensed Chaos. That actually is on my list.
That's
right.
I even if people aren't into chaos magic, that's the book that I tell. If you're interested in just magic, period, that's the first book you should read.
Cool.
And most, yeah, and I'm definitely not alone in that. Keats, of course, talks about Phil Hine. He had Phil Hine on his show on Prag Magic. And so, yeah, and so Phil Hine is a very important person and figure in modern occult practice. And that book is just it's a great how-to. It's very straightforward, and which a lot of occult books are not straightforward. So it's refreshing to have more of them nowadays. A lot more nowadays are very straightforward, how-to books now. But in the past, a lot of them were very obscure.
Wow. Do you think that's because of the Thelema involvement and all that stuff that we were talking about before? Or do you think that kind of muddled it? Or
yes, definitely. I think a lot of them. Crowley was such a brilliant writer. He was just an amazing writer, and he was so good with words, and perhaps too good. Like he was so brilliant, he was like almost too brilliant to really. He couldn't really just break it down in simple ways for people. He always had to introduce a lot of what he wrote had a sense of humor to it, a very dark and twisted sense of humor, but he would definitely, and so it's hard to know what he wrote was he writing seriously or not. A lot of it was done in jest and fun. So, but yeah, he wrote very just. It was hard to read. Austin Osman Spare, it can be very difficult to read. Kenneth Grant can also be difficult to read. So you have these really great and important figures of the past whose books are definitely difficult to navigate through, for sure.
And your book, and by the way, shout out to Keats. He's written some introductions to your books, hasn't he?
Yes, and very great ones too. I'm forever indebted to him for writing those forwards, because I think as a writer, as I am, I'm an outsider. I'm definitely not established. I don't think in any way. And it's been a struggle for many decades. It's been a struggle being an outsider author. When you have another person who you respect and who you admire write really just brilliant and nice, encouraging words for your book, and it's the beginning of the book, it helps tremendously. Like this, one's self-esteem. So when he wrote, it really helped my self-esteem tremendously. And I actually. When I met him in person, him and his girlfriend Mary, when they came to LA, at that time when I met him, I was even thinking about just not even writing the previous book, Love, Chaos, and Theory and Practice. I felt at the time it was just a little too self-helpy, and I didn't really want to write like a self-help book. But, so I was actually discouraged, and just meeting him, and just it really helped me to boost my self-esteem and go ahead with writing the book. And then wrote that one, and then wrote the End of the World, which was from last year. So it definitely helps that we have each other, for sure, in this community that we've all built.
Oh my gosh, I feel so much the same way. I'm a total newbie, and everybody that I've connected with, Keats and others, have been so helpful and so amazing and so inspirational. And also, there's an energy, that comes about, and thank you. You said it better than I'm gonna. I appreciate being a part of it now.
Yes. No, it's been very nice, getting to know you. It's great that we're, it's just it's nice to see it, like people coming and we have you and Michelle and Navier as well. Navier is fairly recent, and so
she and I are clicking real well.
It's great, and I hope it grows. I hope more and more people. So I think, hopefully, people. I think, it's the thing is that, one of the things I wanted to do with Love Chaos was that, people didn't necessarily have to follow it, but I wanted to show that, it could be done, that people can just make up their own thing, and it didn't have to be to have like ulterior motives to control people and to start a cult or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's something that hey, you know what? If this guy can do it and he's like a nobody, then I can do it, right? And I think a lot of these podcasts are examples of that. Like, a lot of you guys doing podcasts are showing to other people, like, hey, if that person can do it, then I can do it.
Right.
And by doing that, I think people, like, if I can write a book, you guys can write a book. Other people can write a book and publish it. And what happens is it creates a chain reaction where people are inspired to become artists and thinkers themselves. My hope is that in the future, that will be the prime thing for humanity. It won't be capitalism. It won't be making money, but each person, their main focus will be about turning their life into a work of art.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
I love that you say that, turning your life into a work of art.
Yeah. Where I first, the main person who kind of, the way he presented it that really struck to me was Michel Foucault. Because I don't think a lot of people, when they study this French philosopher from the 20th century, they talk a lot about a lot of other things that he wrote and talked about. And he's a brilliant philosopher, but he did a lot of deconstructing. He was considered part of the deconstructionist movement of the mid 20th century, right? And and they were all about analyzing and deconstructing and looking at history, looking at language, looking at systems of power and control, and dissecting it, right? And it was him and other people of his time were doing this. But one thing that he did put out as a solution to life, where people are always saying, we're always talking about all the negative things, all the bad things that are happening in life. What are you proposing, as a solution? And he talked about a number of things, but the thing that he kind of kept on coming back to was this idea of turning your life into a work of art. And it really struck a chord with me. And I think a lot of my favorite artists, writers, musicians, that's what they did. And I think that that's something that we all can do. And people may be confused, well, what does that mean? And I think that if you can think of a work of art, your favorite work of art, and look at that work of art and ask yourself, well, why is that work of art your favorite? What is it? What are the different aspects to that work of art? Say Beethoven's Ninth Symphony or Shakespeare's Hamlet, right? What is it? What are things about that play or that piece of music that you like so much? So there's different parts to it. There's things that were put in there to make it what it is by the artists who created it. So look at your life in that way. Think about your own life. So for me, my number one component to me is my being a father. So what is it about being a father to a 15-year-old boy? How can I turn that into a work of art to my own, best abilities? I'm certainly not, I'm far from perfect, but I work at it. It's not just a job. I wanted to see it as a work of art. The next most important thing would be my writing. That's an easy one. That's already a work of art. But how can I turn the process of creating art, creating these novels, and also writing nonfiction? How can that experience of being a writer? Because the whole process of writing, it happens all the time. It happens when I'm on a hike, or I'm walking down the street, or I'm driving a car. And so there's so many other different areas. Being a son to my mother, how can that become a work of art? How being a boyfriend to a girlfriend, or a friend to a friend, or as a counselor to the students, or if I'm in traffic, if I'm driving my car, how can my interactions with other drivers become works of art?
Wow, I wish more people thought that way.
Right. And so I think it's important to know that some works of art are very grounded in realism. So it's not about being this super fancy thing. It could be very much grounded in reality. I think the best works of art are grounded in reality anyway. So, yeah, I think that
like Mount Fuji here and the wave and all this stuff is grounded in reality, but it has a whole different thing going on yet.
Yes, that's beautiful. I love that image too. Yeah, I loved how Japanese art could capture nature like that, where they were depicting nature, but they were also expressing something more too.
It's incredible. That's cool that you see that depth. You mentioned theater, and this is another topic. It could be a whole show, so we won't go down there much because I want to return to evocation. But I believe that I've done some acting in my adult life, and I've studied some theater. My ex-wife is a theater major and stuff, and we did a lot of work together. But so, anyways, I have this idea, this understanding, and not to mention the martial arts that I studied have a lot to do with subtleties. And so I feel that understanding theater has helped me to get a perspective upon magic and upon the theater of our world, and like what I can sort of see when people are, especially societies at large, are kind of putting on a show.
Yeah,
I can see the trap, what's going on there.
right.
And
Yeah,
you were talking about magic and imagination, and I think that's theater is
actually theatrical performance is a big is very helpful with magic ritual. I think there's definitely, if you have experience in a theater, use that experience as an actor when you're doing rituals. It is yeah. If you look at Crowley was very theatrical, and I think that, and with his whole life too. I mean, that's if it regards to turning your life into a work of art. I mean, he definitely did that. It was definitely faulted in a lot of ways, but it was very theatrical, and we don't have to be like that. But there's an element of the theater of performance. If you have experience as an actor, use that and introduce that into your rituals, because if you start to build a relationship with these entities that you work with, if you can introduce some of your acting skills to them,
like I never thought of that.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, use your acting skills, how you can emote, how you can communicate and enunciate, how you speak words, and the intention behind how you speak those words. They will respond very well to that.
That adds a layer of intention to my practice. Thanks a lot. Wow.
Yeah, definitely. Actors, I think most actors can become very comfortable with magic ritual, because it's because you're used to this whole imagination realm of make believe. You're actually you become another character.
Exactly.
Right. You play a role, and a lot of the magic ritual, I think, the really effective ones, has a part of that for sure. Yeah,
I got that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a way of, I mean, because the magic on stage, I'm just kind of thinking and remembering, and it's a thing. Like it changes reality. It changes, and not only for you, but for everyone around you.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Yeah.
It does. Definitely.
So, how does evocation play into this?
Okay. So evocation is, so again, um, so some people who are into evocation are really big about wanting to make sure that the spirits and yes, high school drama does count. Yes, I was in high school drama too, and it did
Cool.
help. Yeah. So evocation, some people are really big about having to make sure that you see, you know, that the spirit that you're working with, that you're conjuring up, is there. Is actually there, right? Like that's, if they're not there, then you're not doing the right thing.
Are you saying like physical evidence, or just like they're there?
Both.
Okay. Okay.
Like you have to see it. You have to see it actually appear in front of you, or maybe not so literal. Maybe there's some just impression that they're there, or something else is coming through to you. Like that's a big thing for conjurers, right? For a lot of people, not everyone. I'm not. I didn't want to do that, and I feel that these entities work in a realm that is more closely associated with the imagination. I don't.
Mm.
My form of evocation is more about the imagination and the invisible realm, and
Wow.
how my thoughts and my emotions and my physical actions interplay with them in a way, with through the ritual. um, they communicate to me. So in the process of what I did a number of things, and then it resulted in scrying. So I was doing a form of scrying, which is where you're looking at a mirror, a certain particular kind of mirror that's dark glass.
Uh-huh.
It's And so you get this scrying mirror, and then I was also using incense that was particular to that date according to astrology on those dates. So I was dealing with the dates for the stones that I was using, also the again the incense. So, and there was a number of other different things, never different elements that I won't go into, but it's in the book. Um, but in culminating and in doing a number of prayers to these entities. Again, there it's based on the four directions. So there could be like in the east, it could be Lucifer or Orions. So for me, I have both kings and chiefs of the different directions. So there's
Cool.
Lucifer, yeah, and so there's a hierarchy in this sense. I found in working in this kind of ritual that it was important to have a hierarchy, and it just, for me, that's what I developed. And again, in my book, I go into all of that. I definitely go into that. In the South, you have other ones as well, and I won't go into all of them. But the South, there's a king and chief, and the West, there's a king and chief, and the North, there's a king and a chief. And then under them, there are spirits. They all spoke to me. So I basically did a number of different rituals. In the early part of the day, I did the sex magic invocation with the statement of intent, which was that human beings will survive and evolve, right?
Mm.
So that would be an internalized statement of intent, but then it would become externalized through the evocation. So that I basically seeking the aid of these entities to help human beings survive and evolve. And then in the process of the entering that trance state, once I entered the trance states, then I wrote down in the scrying process what they told me. So what they expressed to me, and in their language, which was, it wasn't like another language. It was still English, but it was very surreal, and it's very similar to how I write in my fiction. In my fiction, what I do in my fiction is I'm just telling a story, but there are passages which are very surreal, and I try to use my mind as a gateway to a spirit realm, so I'll have spirits communicating to me and telling me words. So again, it's about putting myself uh, in this trance state and using my mind and my body as a gateway to allow these things. Now, I think it's important. Like I mentioned the names earlier, Lucifer and Orions, and some of the other entities I work with are typically referred to as demonic, and certainly can be, and perhaps for most people they are. Now, the reason for why I use these or work not use them, I work with these entities and have a relationship with them, is I'm a really big believer in the power of inversion. So taking something which is a notion, someone has a notion about, say, the devil, right? And you taking that and you twist it around into a positive force and not a negative one. And the reason why I do this is that I find it to be very effective, and it's not, and certainly not, and definitely not new at doing this. I think every belief system has done this, and certainly the monotheistic faiths have done this. And so you can look at, and the whole word demonizing is about, the church fathers in the old days basically took a lot of the pagan deities and demonized them and gave them evil qualities. So it's about having a finding what entities speak to you, but again, it's finding in what ways, how you define them in ways that they speak to you, so that you could build a strong relationship. So I'm definitely, my main thing is love for other people and love for myself. That's love chaos, But for love chaos to work and for other people to do their own thing, I highly encourage people just to follow their own path, to work with entities that you feel comfortable working with. If you feel comfortable, some people feel comfortable making sure that they, invoke the name of God or the Lord prior to doing any ritual. And if that's something that feels really strongly for the individual, they should do it. And this goes back to my work as a counselor. As a counselor, I can't tell them to do exactly what I did and do the same things, practice magic and stuff like this. They have to find what works for them. And I've had some great relationships with people who were Christians or Muslim, Jewish, atheists, whatever. And I saw that their belief system, works for them. And I think that that's really important, is each person has to find what works for you. So that in my particular case, this is what worked for me, and in not just this one ritual I did, but for the rest of my life too.
Do you is grimoire, your grimoire, then is it written as a grimoire? Like, is it something that someone could use as sort of a study guide?
Sure. Yes. And one of the things you'll find is that is when you read Keats's foreword, he talks about how it's similar to the grimoire tradition, yet very different in a lot of ways. And that was the intention behind it. Was I didn't want it to be a step-by-step how to do this exact same ritual. What it is instead is talking about my own particular ritual in terms of what went into it, all the different the thought process, the intention, the context of the ritual, the historical aspect of it, the all the different components to it, all the different items that I had, the entities that the relationship that I have with them, all of the different dates that I chose, all of these different elements that were basically details that were involved in creating the 6-day ritual is what comprises the book. So that by the time you get to the end of the book, and it's not giving it away, I actually don't tell the people what I did. So in that last chapter, what is there is actually what the entities told me. So there's a name for each entity. They told me their name when I was scrying, and I wrote down what they told me. And they each were, some of them were under Orion, some of them were under Beelzebul, some of them were under Astaroth, some of them were under Asmodeus. So they all had different qualities about them, dependent on which region, east, south, west, north they were from. So the hierarchy, the different, there's like almost like different themes running throughout the different spirits, because that's who they were related to. And then that's how they spoke to me. And in terms of how the intention of survival and evolution, how that played a role with their nature. Because the key thing was for this thing was wanting to make sure that I was working with entities that had the same interest that I did, right? Because you're gonna, as you, when you work in magic and you encounter entities, even in your daily life, you're going to run into entities that don't have the same interest as you, and they want something else. And these certainly are demonic. Whether you call a spirit a demon or not, I think the main, whether something's black, white, magic, left hand path, right hand path, whatever label you want to give it, I think what's most important is the qualities and its characteristics, its personality, and its actions. It's just like a person. Like if I meet you, Chander, and you tell me that you're a Republican, right? And you're I don't know. And initially, I'll probably kind of, I probably might have some problems. But then you show through your behaviors, right, that you're a good person. You're thoughtful, you're compassionate, you're understanding. Say you're Christian as well too, and you display all these different qualities about you where you have really good integrity. So to me, it's like you're coming at me with, initially Republican Christian, right? And we have disagreements, but ultimately your whole way who you are is someone I have a great deal of respect for.
I see.
Yeah, I think people need to approach the spirit world the same way and working with entities the same way. Is that the names themselves are, to me, not as important as what is the force that you're dealing with. And so if you're working with something that's coming at you and you can definitely feel it's trying to do you harm, these are things you should try either, defend yourself or find a way to get it out of your life. And I think it's the same thing with human beings too. So people, it's a certain level of like street smarts, and personal, human skills. It will also be applied to the occult realm as well, the spirit realm.
Making it pragmatic.
Sure, right. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, it's got to be practical, pragmatic. Definitely.
I've started scrying. I've done some scrying throughout my world, but recently I've done a little more, and I even made a little dark mirror, kind of like what you're talking about. And it's I know what you mean about hearing them. I had an experience yesterday. I won't go into now, but wow. So but that level, to actually communicate a hierarchy and to empower you to that level, you must have established a pretty good relationship with them.
Yes, it was that's why what led up to this actual scrying, there was a number of things which I had to do to build that relationship, to make sure that what I was dealing with was something that I wanted to be dealing with, Yeah. And even despite that, you'll still hear voices that are trying to trick you and stuff like that, And I think that, people talk about, banishing rituals and all these other protective things. And I do my own form of protective ritual every day. I'm really a big believer in that.
Me too.
I think, though, that we also have to be very mindful on a daily basis in our daily living, that the way these entities work that are trying to do us harm, one of the more effective ways to do us harm is through our own thoughts and through our own feelings. And yes, and so it's because if you notice, you'll just start getting these thoughts, and you just like, where are these coming from? And it just oftentimes it's responses to experiences. You have an experience, and then you respond to it, usually based on a habit, because we really most of the time respond to things habitually, like how we responded to it before. So usually that's a sign that if again if these spirits or entities or demons exist, if they do, then that means that they've actually built a relationship with us.
Mm.
They've been there. So if we're habitually kind of like beating ourselves up with different thought patterns or emotional patterns, as we all do, we all do this. That means that there's if these entities work with us through that conscious level, that means that they've had a relationship with us, and so yeah, they're there, and I always like that. If you look at Austin Osman Spare's art, he has a lot of really beautiful human beings and a lot of beautiful spirits of all kinds. But then he has these some that look very demonic. But even the most demonic ones seem kind of humorous, or he seems kind of like okay with these demons. They're there, and he's very aware. He was definitely someone who was very aware of these entities,
Mm.
and they came out through his art. Um, and I think that's a way to deal with these forces that are trying to do harm, is to understand their nature, and to not allow them to take a certain amount of power over us. And a lot of that really comes down to the way we deal with our thoughts and our feelings.
Awesome. I'm relating that to a personal issue right now, and I just never considered. I considered. I don't know why. I can tell other voices, but I consider that my inner voice, and I never even thought to approach it as maybe an entity that I've created a relationship with, even if that entity is just the egregore of my patterns or whatever. I never
Yeah,
thought of it like that. That really helps to unwind things as we're talking.
sure. I like the way you put that just now. I like that the way you just expressed that with the egregore of your own patterns. Like if that's what it is, if that's what these things are, they come out. They're created out of these patterns that we build based on experiences that we have, and it is sort of there, right? And so again, one of the things that's healthy about agnosticism is that is the
Hi, Ian.
idea. Hey, Ian.
Mhm.
And so it's the idea that these things may not really exist, or they may exist, and and I know that doesn't work for everybody. Some people, they need to know, they need to have things, they need to have more certainty, and that's fine. And I'll be honest with people, then if that's the case, love chaos is not for you. Love chaos is really only, yeah, it's only for people who want to embrace and hold and love uncertainty, and be comfortable with that and exploring life with that uncertainty. If people just do not want to do that, then yeah, there's plenty of other belief systems out there that will offer you certainty, and love chaos is not one of them.
One of my favorite uh, things from the Japanese masters of old days was plant uncertainty within your heart as solidly as an oak tree. And I've lived by that. It's so true. You're deluding yourself. I think I'm deluding myself when I want things to not be that way.
Yeah, I love that. That's really yeah. If you could send that to me in a message, I'd love to just have that. I would love to just have that, like, when I go to work, just have that just right above my computer.
Oh, that's special to hear, man. Thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely send that to you.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's definitely one that means a lot to me. Yeah.
Do you think you're so when you're in the counseling context, do you have to, and you want to communicate one of these things that we're talking about, do you have to mask it so that it's not magical talk?
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely don't. I have to be very careful. In the helping field, most people in the helping field, especially drug and alcohol counselors, tend to be very religious. They tend to be very Christian,
Mm.
12-step, and so the notions of doubt, agnosticism, and especially like a Luciferian, right? So I consider myself what I call agnostic, gnostic Luciferian. So that's where my main entity for me is Lucifer, which in Latin means light bringer. You know, to me, Lucifer represents truth, integrity, honesty, but essentially the good aspects of not just humanity but of existence. So that's what it represents to me.
Cool.
Now I can't explain that to a lot of my coworkers or the people I work with, because in their mind, you know, Lucifer is the embodiment, is the prince of hell, right? And he's the prince of evil. So I don't even go there with that. There's a whole. It's happened a few times, and it was a can of worms, and it just. So I have to be very careful at my job to not. Of course, you know, and this is talked about in secular worlds, but it's not talked about outside of it. You know, and I have lots of ties to secularism, you know, secular humanists and atheists and agnostics. But this notion of Christian privilege, a lot of it's less so these days, but it's this notion that you could go around and speak passages from the Bible about this or that and say this, God saved me, Jesus saved me, and everyone has to just kind of take it. Whereas, like, well, what if I come out and say, well, you know what, Lucifer saved me, you know, and all hail Satan, you know, and of course I would get fired for saying something like that, right? Because it would just cause such an uproar. But it's again this whole notion of Christian privilege, which again is not as prevalent nowadays as it used to be, as Christianity is not as strong a force as it once was. And I'm not trying to make Christianity seem bad or anything, but this whole notion that it people go around think just with this assumption that it's the only way. Sadly to say, so it's, in most mainstream society, it's not the case. But in the recovery field, that Christian privilege is very much there still. You know, it definitely is there. So I have to be very careful. You know, I'll let my coworkers talk about Jesus, Jesus that, Jesus this, and I, you know, just let them talk. If they ask me directly, then I'll tell them, no, I'm agnostic. I won't tell them I'm a Luciferian, but I'll tell them I'm agnostic, and I'll explain why, you know, and how it's helped me, how doubt has helped me. And they get up, a lot of times they'll get angry about that and upset, but it's something that as a counselor, it's unfortunate that the counseling field, even in a city like Los Angeles, is dominated by Christian privilege.
Totally.
Yeah.
I live in Boulder, Colorado, and there's Naropa University here. I've done some teaching there and have some ties with, not currently, but anyway, they have a transpersonal psychology program and some other psychology programs, and it's Buddhist based largely. And I haven't had experience with that therapy and that program specifically, but it makes me wonder, like, you know, are they taking a step out of that realm that you're just talking about, or are they just creating a new one in the Buddhist paradigm? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I there's a lot of things about Buddhism that I like, for sure. I think it definitely is. Again, it was one of the things that I almost decided to join before I created Love Chaos. Was I considered becoming a Buddhist?
Really?
And yeah, I did. It was very appealing to me, and I like that Keats Ross. Absolutely no absolutes, right?
Yep.
And so Buddhism definitely has a lot of appealing things to me. And Great Jedi, that's right. And it's actually a really great peer-to-peer support group called Refuge Recovery, and it's an alternative to the 12 steps. It became very popular, and I would go to meetings here in LA, and it was very popular. A lot of people showed up, and it was really great. They start off the meetings with meditation, a 20-minute guided meditation. Meditation is very helpful with people who struggle with addiction. I highly recommend that if you struggle with addiction, explore meditation. Meditation is one of the most powerful tools to help people with addiction and with every element to life, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. But what Keats says is that people don't seem to mind Buddhism. There are absolutes to Buddhism. There are definitely certain it's a system, and there's a lot of things about it I like, but there's certain things that it didn't speak to me, and so yeah, I could see that for sure. I think there's so many different modalities. So if
Yeah.
if the place you're talking about is offering a Buddhist form of modality, um, it's another alternative. I think that should be, there's plenty of Christian organizations offering to help people, and that's fine. It should be made available to people. I think all these different religions and spiritualities and paths and modalities, the more alternatives that we have, the healthier our society is, I think.
Totally. And even within Buddhism itself, there's different aspects. Were you into esoteric stuff or like Zen or?
Well, I did like Zen. I did like Zen. I did, and it was interesting to me. I like a lot of the different sayings in Zen. But yeah, it was something I never jumped head on into Buddhism. Just again because there's a couple of things that kind of kept me from fully embracing it. But it's definitely one of the more appealing ones to me for sure. Yeah.
Totally the same way. I can't embrace all of anything, but my roots are basically in well, Naropa is Tibetan Buddhism based, but mine is Japanese based through the Tibetan Buddhist esoteric practices. So there's there's a lot of entities and things, and so it's kind of comparative more to magic and my experience than like Zen, which I've done a lot of and stuff. But so those Buddhism practices within can have their own path, in that way too.
Right. Yeah, just like as with Christianity, there's a lot of different Christianities, and
Right.
yeah, I mean, there's just and yeah, I mean, it's great that we have so many different paths,
For sure. Derek, I just had a little thing go off because you asked me to remind you when it was getting to be about this time. I want to keep talking to you all night, man. I don't want to let you go. I'm serious, but I want to ask if you want to keep talking, we can, and we don't have to wind it down. But would you be open to some questions and answers from the chat if they have any?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. If does anyone have any questions, for sure. Yeah.
Hey guys, anybody out there have some questions for Derek? He's, you got him here, and he's got lots to offer that I haven't even touched upon yet. Man, there's not enough time for interviews.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Rich. Walter.
One of the things one of the things I like about these live streams is that afterwards I like to go see what people write in the comments, because while we're talking, once in a while I'll catch something that somebody writes over there, but for the most part I miss like 99% of what people write.
Me too.
And, okay, so yeah, so later afterwards I'll see what people write. So Philip Blair says, oh okay, Shadow Magic. Yeah.
Oh, I just did something goofy. Sorry, man.
So
you were
saying,
talking.
what's next for Derek Hunter? Books, magic, internet, etc. Okay, cool. Thank you, Sam. So right now, I decided I'm no longer writing any Love Chaos books. So the 3 Love Chaos books that I wrote, the last 2, which Keats wrote those beautiful forwards to, that's it for me in regards to writing. Well, as far as nonfiction books about love chaos, for now, maybe in the future I'll come back to it. But my primary focus, prior to these last 2 books, was as a writer of stories. My main passion is I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories in fiction. Whether it be novels or short stories. And so I had written a book and published a book in 2018 called Black, as the first of a trilogy, and it is a retelling of classics, great works of literature from the past, but they all were told from a Christian perspective. So the first one is the search for the Holy Grail, in particular this German writer Aschenbach, his novel that he wrote way back, and it's called Parzival. So it's taking that story of Parzival and his search for the Holy Grail and reinventing it. And again, I'm big into inversion. So taking a philosophy or a perspective on things, and turning it upside down. So that's what I'm doing with these stories. I do a lot of turning upside down, not just thematically or stylistically or with the characters, but also in terms of the philosophy behind it. So there's that story. There's another story in these tales, which is the Divine Comedy. So Dante wrote the Divine Comedy, which was about a story about himself, who he's still alive, but finding himself in hell. And he gets help from Virgil, who he wasn't a Christian, but he was someone that Dante admired. And so Virgil helps him to get out of hell, and they go through all these different stages of hell and see all these different aspects of hell. And that's super powerful, very dramatic stuff. Great writing. It's one of the great, classics of all time. He goes through hell, he goes through purgatory, and goes to paradise. Now, because Virgil is a pagan, he can't go to paradise. So Virgil says, goodbye, see you later, Dante, have fun in paradise with God and your girlfriend Beatrice. And yeah. So this version of the story has a character based on myself. It's autobiographical. And his guide is Austin Osman Spare. And he goes through not hell, purgatory, or paradise, but a realm that is called the divine chaos. And in the divine chaos, there is both pleasure and pain. There is both good and evil on almost everything. And so Spare helps this guy who's basically on myself. And he goes through all these different elements of his own life, different things of my own life, different relationships I had with people, the good, the bad, all that stuff. In a similar way with Dante, but it's a different kind of experience of the afterlife. And then the third and last story is a inversion of the Faust legend. So Dr. Faustus is the known German mystic, magician, doctor.
Dr. Fauci. Faust. Sorry. No, I'm sorry.
The legend of Faust is he sold his soul to the devil to attain ultimate power, and so there's the play by Christopher Marlowe, which is great, but it has a very kind of traditional perspective on Faust, and then Goethe, the German writer and poet of the late 1700s, early 1800s, he wrote his own version of Faust. In his version of Faust, he's a lot more sympathetic towards Faust, and it's definitely a different version. But in this version of Faust, it's even more different. And in this version, the Lord God is actually the bad guy, and so he convinces Mephistopheles. Mephistopheles works for God to try to crush Faust's spirit. And so Faust is conscious of how in the universe this God is basically like in the Gnostic sense a demiurge, right? His whole purpose is like as a evil supreme spiritual dictator. So Faust is like almost like a Gnostic kind of hero. He's in defiance against this evil entity who's this dictator of the universe, right? So in this version, yeah, and he discovers he's an alchemist, and so he works on creating what he considers the drug of the gods, which is this thing called soma. And many people have talked about it throughout history. It's this mysterious drug that came from the Indus Valley. They think some people don't think it actually ever existed, but there's a lot of reference to this mysterious drug that's referred to as soma. So I took this idea, and basically Faust, through his father's studies, believes that soma is actually the philosopher's stone. So for people who study alchemy, that the philosopher's stone is sort of like the ultimate goal, and to create. And so Faust thinks he has it, right? So he actually creates this drug, and he takes it, and he does. He doesn't feel, in fact, like a god. And so the story follows him and Mephistopheles, and they do a wager, like in Goethe's version. They bet, and Mephistopheles says, I'm going to make things happen that are going to crush your spirit. So you're going to have experiences that are going to demoralize you and make you give up. Because that's the ultimate aim of this demiurge and Mephistopheles, is to make human beings give up and make them become basically slaves. So Faust is in defiance. He says, no, I don't care what you're going to throw at me. I am not going to give in. I am not going to submit to your Lord and Master. I'm going to continue to be in defiance. So that's what the third story is about that. So the first book, Black, was the introduction of all these three stories, all the different characters. And I wanted to include full color paintings by my mentor and a good friend who was my psychology professor in school. And all his paintings are on my covers to my books. And I wanted to include them actually inside the book in large format. So the books, unfortunately, are not cheap. They're just, I charge basically, I'm not making any money off of it, but I have to charge the amount because of the cost of printing them. They're full color images on the inside. People can get cheap versions of it, as a Kindle version. So people can still read it in a Kindle version for cheap. But I really wanted to make his paintings a big part of these stories. So the inside have full color paintings on the inside. So I'm currently working.
I love that.
And so the sequel to it is called White, and I'm almost done with that. It'll come out later this year. And so it'll be like the first book, Black. It'll have the full color paintings. A cheaper version will be available on Kindle, and it'll be a continuation of the story. And then the third and final book in the trilogy will come out next year, and that's called Red. And so the names of the titles of these books are the colors of alchemy. Now, in some traditions of alchemy, there's more than just those three colors. But for me, I really wanted to just narrow it down to those three colors. And I'll say one last thing is that, again, going back to inversion, the traditional notions of black in alchemy is negredo, which is like a form of death and decomposition, and basically the starting point is in death, and then from death goes to black, right? So black is supposed to represent death and decay. It becomes white as the next color, which is in traditional, white is supposed to be purity, innocence, goodness, right? Then the third color in traditional alchemy is red, which represents perfection. Red is supposed to represent, where you got to the ultimate goal, where you're trying to get. So what I wanted to do with these stories is also invert the thematic meaning of the colors. So black in this trilogy means not death, but birth. It means the opposite. It means creation. So in the first book, it's all about what runs through these stories. Again, they're stories, but it is this notion of birth, of creation. The current book I'm writing right now, White, is not about innocence, but the opposite, which is corruption. And through the process of how through experiences, how we become corrupt. And so there's a number of things that happen to these characters that kind of corrupts them, corrupts their integrity. And then the third book is Red, which will be about evolution. It won't be about perfection, but about a continual process of evolving, of growth. So it's not about getting to a point and then stopping. It's about continuing to grow and grow. So that's what will be the Red book will be about. That theme will be running through it. And again, all these stories are stories. They have characters and funny stuff happens. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of like strange, bizarre, funny stuff happening. And it deals with romance. There's love in there. There's romantic things involved for sure. So yeah, it's been a great lot of fun writing this trilogy. And then after that, I'm going to be writing another trilogy about Shakespeare.
Oh yeah, we didn't even dive into that, and I'm so interested about that. Man, I've got to have you back again, please. But wow, I mean, I really am. And before we go to Keith's other question, and I wanted to say two things. One is that I appreciate your storyteller perspective on this, and I also appreciate your growth mentality. I mean, that permeates through everything that I've witnessed from you. Is on your website, your speech, and everything about you screams growth and transformation, transmutation. In my own words, does that sound accurate to you?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say that. Thank you.
That's my impression, man. It's awesome. It's refreshing. So Keith had a question. He
Yeah.
says, what has been the reception in strict occult realms to Love Chaos?
Yeah. Well, it. I think it's been. There was a time where I thought people were kind of being receptive to it, but I think actually what I found as time has moved on, I think as more and more people have discovered it and found out about it, I think there's definitely a positive reaction to it for sure. But I think that there's definitely been a lot of resistance. I definitely think that it's become more. I'd say in the beginning, it was more like positive response. Where I can get my hands in here. And okay, well, anyway, positive response, and the negative was down here. I think the negative has kind of crept up to like, and not exactly equal, but it's weird. It's like there's a lot of people who like, especially, and I did this interview with Miguel Connor on Aeon. No, it wasn't Aeon. I did an Aeon Byte interview with him.
You did.
And
I haven't heard that. I'll have to check that. Cool.
yeah, and that was great because it exposed me to a lot of people, and a lot of people bought my book after seeing me, so that was cool.
Nice.
But then the more recent interview I did with him he does another thing called Finding Hermes. I got so much hatred on that. I mean, there was a lot of good, positive things too, but I got part of it was because I think I really have a lot of respect and admiration for him and what he does, but he has a lot of followers who are climate change deniers. That I think they're QAnon supporters. They're really into sort of like conspiracy theory form of spirituality, like, and so they were just they hated what I had to say, and you check out that video. There's like just like God from the get go. There was just so much negativity at me, and
I'll be prepared. Wow.
yeah, But that was just one example. I think I've run into it too. It's just I've run into people, making fun of it, poo-pooing Love Chaos, and it's like, what the hell is this? And other people, I think I think the notion of uncertainty and embracing doubt is something that I've run across a lot of people in the occult world. They're not comfortable with that. I definitely feel like for a lot of people who practice magic or into the occult, they want certainty, unless they're like fans of Robert Anton Wilson. But actually, I think a lot of Robert Anton Wilson fans don't even practice magic. I think that they like his ideas, and he's really playful and he's really intelligent. But for actual practitioners of magic, most people are mysticism. They're really into certainty. So for something like Love Chaos, they really have no interest in it, And that's what I've come across is that, and I think people have found it to be maybe presumptuous on my part to even create something like it, even though it's like I'm not really trying to go around converting people. It's just a system that works for me, but they're still even like they take that as an offense. So I don't know. I found it as time goes on, more and more people are. Yeah, I've been finding the more naysayers, and part
cancel culture, right? I mean,
well, no, not quite. It's not quite cancel culture. Like if I had said something and everybody's took what I said and then they wanted to try to cancel my career based on I said something offensive or something, that would be like cancel culture. I think it's more, it's more. I think, and also too, this last book, The End of the World, this whole notion about this ritual being used for against climate change, and like climate change is brought up. And I didn't realize how many people in the occult actually don't believe climate change exists. Like there's a lot of people who are religious, they don't think it's real. And it's amazing. Like it's a, and there's people in the occult who like, they feel like science is their enemy. They think that like that, that science is somehow the tool of the government, they're using science to control us and blah blah blah. And so yeah, I didn't realize that there would be such a kind of like a negative reaction based on the fact that the book has deals with climate change, that is trying to use magic to make a difference against climate change. And it is what it is.
That's interesting. I have I have that uncertainty in my heart, and I can entertain both sides of what you just said, and I'm totally comfortable there. I always played the true neutral character in D&D. Okay, I did. Oh. I dig. Keith has another question. He says, "What deities still sing to you to commune with?"
Oh yeah, well, the same ones as before. So okay, so I have a mythology. So one of the things that the book explores is the importance of people developing their own individual mythology. And again, like I am not trying to commit to convert other people to my mythology. My mythology is mine. If people want to adapt my mythology to theirs, that's fine. But it's definitely, I'm not trying to push it on other people. So what I have created, and my mythology actually plays a big part in my my fiction writing. Like these different entities they're definitely in this realm that I've created in the fiction. So it starts right at the closest thing I could come to like the notion of God would be what I call no thing. So it's similar in Kabbalah, like the 0 point, right? Existence comes from no existence, like there's non-existence is what creates existence. So I feel personally really, really connected to that notion of no thing.
Whoa, eats, or wah, sorry, wah. So you're saying that, right? That's what we talked about last night.
Oh.
Exactly what you're saying. Creation from chaos.
Yeah. Oh, Ein Sof. Yeah, right. That's what it is. Yeah, Ein Sof. Yeah. So, and I go into a little bit more, but yeah, basically this notion of no thing. And so from no thing comes to me as the male and female at the same time. Like I this idea that a father figure it created existence by himself. It doesn't really, I don't relate to that. I really, like, if you look at existence, most species, it requires a male and a female to reproduce. So I feel like that the underlying principle in the universe after no thing creates everything, right? As a male and female entity. Now, I really feel like the underlying principle of the universe is there definitely is some order involved, but primarily it's chaos. So for me, the male entity that's comes out of no thing is chaos. That's the male, and then the female is Babylon. Now these again, this is all highly influenced, hugely influenced by Crowley. Crowley talks about Babylon quite a bit, as does Jack Parsons. But this in the thelemic notion of Babylon is like the holy, what they in the Bible, she's considered like the holy whore, and she sacrifices the blood of the saints, right? So for me, I like the notion of Babylon, where she is the mother to us all. She gave birth to us all, and also she, in addition to playing the role of a mother, she is also this beautiful. If you want to call her a whore, in the sense that denies no one. There's a sexual relationship with her, with every entity that she creates, and the only price that she charges, right? Again, going to this notion of the prostitute, is that is your ego. So you're, in terms of having a good relationship with this mother figure that's highly, sexualized. And again, I think sexual energy is extremely important to life. And
Sure.
so for me, that's why I wanted to have a mother entity being represented by her, because she's an embodiment of sex. So this notion of she giving birth to us all, and in order to have a healthy relationship with her, to understand that yes, we are special, but we are certainly not her only creations. And this goes deeply, I think, to all of us as children. One of the ways we have to grow up is we have to understand that we are not the center of the universe. That, and one of the difficult things, my dad, talked about this too. He was the oldest, and it was difficult when he had his younger brother born. And it's a difficult thing, I think, a lot of times when you see siblings having their younger siblings enter their world, because then suddenly mommy has to pay, give her love to these other kids. In some cases more, because they're little ones. And so this creates jealousies, envy, and insecurities. We're no longer the center of the universe. And so this, I think this is a very important thing to have a role in my metaphysical notions of mythology. And so there's an evil entity that comes out of this. And again goes back to Crowley, is this the Lord of the Abyss, Choronzon, and it's spelled Chorronzon. And so he represents to me, many people would consider like the devil, the trickster god, or the Lord of the illusion, or Lord of lies. For me, this character does. And so where his evil stems from is that he denies his mother. He denies his mother. He denies his father. He denies how he was created. He denies the fact that there are other entities in the world just as important as he is. And so his whole plan, his whole pursuit is to enslave other people, to dominate and control and destroy other people, to make himself God, to eliminate his own parents, and to make everyone worship him. And so this is this God who is like this demiurge, who is out to do evil. And all the entities and spirits and demons that work under him work with this purpose. Now, the opposite to him is Lucifer. And so for Lucifer, he is basically everything that Choronzon is not. He is truth, he's integrity, he's love, he's understanding, he's intelligence, he's compassion, he's passion, all in pride as well, strength. So it's not just, I don't want to, he doesn't represent passive qualities. He definitely represents strong qualities and power. I feel that power and individualism is something that can be embraced while also having truth, and defiance. So this is Lucifer and Choronzon are basically equals and throughout existence, and they find their expression through all of us. And so Lucifer and Choronzon both live within all of us. So we have the capacity to express evil as well as good. And so under that, all the other entities I work with are under Lucifer. So in my universe, my mythology, all the entities that he has under him all are related to. Oh, look at
this is Shaka.
What's her name?
His name is Shaka. He's about 7 months old now.
Oh, it's his name. Okay, Shaka.
Yeah.
Oh, I love
great.
That. Oh, he's 7 months old, but he's big.
He's huge. He was so tiny when I brought him home on my bicycle, but now he's huge.
Oh, wow.
You're taking over the stream here, Kitty.
He's great with you. That's good.
Which entity did you just call that he responded to? I wonder. I didn't catch.
Oh, Lucifer.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Maybe that was it. I think it was.
But yeah, there's a number of entities under Lucifer. There's Orions. He's the chief of the East. So in my mythology, Lucifer is, in addition to being sort of like the the ruler of light above all of us. He's also in the position of the east. Under him is Orion's, and in the south is Satan. So I took the notion of Satan as being a power over material existence, not evil in the sense of to do death and destruction. Again, that is represented by Chironzon in my mythology. But this notion that the quality of Satan as being the ruler of the material realm, under Anton LaVey, who was the guy who started the Church of Satan, and other notions of Satan too, that appealed to me. Like I thought that I don't want this to be dominating my life. I don't want to be worshiping materialism too much, but I did want to have it. I did feel like I lived in this material world. I'm living in it. I'm here. I need to have some degree of power within it, not to do harm to other people, but to make sure that I have a happy life and I do well, and I have some degree of success and happiness in this world. So that's what Satan represents to me. Under him is Beelzebul. In the west is Baphomet, and she represents androgyny, the combination of opposites, male and female, animal and beast. Under him, her is also Astaroth, which is also another multi-gender entity. Sometimes it could be female, sometimes it could be male. In the north is Pan, and under Pan is Asmodeus. And those are like the kings and chiefs that I work with. They have spirits under them, and those spirits are in that book I wrote, The End of the World. They all have a page dedicated to what they spoke to me and their different qualities. And in the book, you also read about all of the different chiefs and their qualities and what they mean to me.
Wow, Keith, hope that answered your question. To me, it showed me that your mythology, as you call it, is well put together. I mean, it all makes sense. It all is very logical and stuff. And yet you are still empowering people with the tools to build their own.
What I hope it does, I hope it by me explaining all of that, and also when they read it in the book, I hope that I really want to encourage people is that you can create your own mythology and also put a lot of thought into it. Play around with it, but like put a lot of thought into it. Like put it, because what happens when you create a mythology and you put a lot of thought into it, it really makes a lot of sense to you. Is that then that it will inform your magical work. And then the beautiful thing about it too is that it doesn't, not only does it inform your magical rituals, it informs your daily living. You'll find yourself seeing life in a new way, that is informed by your mythology.
Nice.
Yeah.
Informed by mythology. Oh my gosh. Anybody else have any other questions? I think that I thought I saw something from Keats. Anybody else? Make sure to put them in caps because I'm having a hard time keeping up with you guys.
Yeah, I think there's a question, but that Keats wrote, but I think he's asking a question to Philip.
And he also asked another question. He restated his question that you initially answered, the first one. So, holy mackerel! So when you
there's Keats. He's asking a question there.
How do we reach across the aisle, promoting disparate and personal praxis? Should we? Can't read it. Do I need to say that again?
No, well, it's there on the screen.
Word.
Yeah. How do we reach across the aisle promoting disparate and personal practice? Should we? Interesting. That's a great question. I think it really depends on the person. I think it depends on what you're willing to do. I think that I'm willing to do a certain amount of putting out love chaos out there and seeing how it engages people. And I'm okay with debates in a certain sense. I'm not against debating or reaching across the aisle to people who have different points of view from me. But I don't want to spend too much time doing that, especially in the internet. Like, I wouldn't mind doing it in person. In person would be kind of cool because then I could see the person in front of me, and then we can engage in conversation. The problem is with the internet, you don't see this person. You don't have no idea who they are. A lot of times, people engaging in shouting matches online and these so-called internet debates, but you don't know who you're talking to, and it's just like they're these strangers, and people take things the wrong way. And I just find that most cases, I'll engage a little bit with people, and I certainly will just say, how I feel and what I think. But for the most part, I don't. Any For the most part, I think. I think what the answer to your question, Keats. I think it's important to promote your work and your vision of life out there for the world. And if people disagree, that's fine. I don't think we should just hold our beliefs to ourselves. I think we should, if you have a vision and you have a voice, you should put it out there. But to the degree and level of how much you debate or disagree or try to reach across the aisle to change people's minds, people very rarely change their minds from a debate or argument.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it really up to each person. So Philip, he's asking, have I ever seen a UFO?
Cool question, Derek. I'll put that up on there.
Yeah. So okay, before all the riots happened, in DC, I don't know if people noticed, but they're okay. Another question. Okay, cool. So just going back to the UFO question.
Thanks, you guys.
I in person, I've never seen a UFO, but there. I don't know if people noticed. Like a week before the riots happened in D.C., there was a sighting of unidentified flying objects in Hawaii. I don't know.
I saw that.
Yeah, and I don't. And Navia, if she's still here, but
I meant to ask her.
Yeah, I messaged her. I asked her if she saw it, and she didn't see it. But it was an example where it was like you couldn't. I mean, I highly recommend people go check it out. I hope it's still available on the internet. But I saw it. There was a article on Yahoo News, and it took me to the local Hawaiian news station. And yeah, it was a big blue something, DIII. And so it was something that it was definitely like not. I don't know.
I see. It was what?
Yeah, it looked like some kind of alien spacecraft. So I don't know. I'm definitely a believer that the aliens have been interacting with us. Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about that. I'm not very knowledgeable about UFOs. And so I can't really speak on it with any kind of authority, but it definitely is interesting. And quite possibly we might find out from the State Department. I think one of the lawmakers slipped in there for the stimulus package that I forget who. It's one of the government had to release a certain amount of information that they had about UFOs within 6 months.
I hadn't heard that. Interesting.
Yeah. So I
think
we're inching closer to making it. Yeah. They're admitting that yes, they're aliens, they exist, and we've been working with them. So I think it's.
So was that on Hawaii? Was that pretty convincing to you? Is that what made it stand out?
Well, what made it stand out? I have seen some other stuff in videos and documentaries too, where I think the thing that makes it pretty stand out is multiple accounts. You have multiple accounts of different people, and you have different videos of the same thing, and. Maybe it's not aliens. Maybe it's like a special ops military vehicle, whatever that they have technology for that they don't want. So it could be that.
Wow.
It's good to shed. So Ian's saying it's good to shed belief in the place of knowledge, as quite often beliefs form prisons of the mind. Yes.
Sorry, man. Yeah.
Well, I think that's more of a statement. I think that's a great statement.
Let's see here. Through magical transitory states, do you commune with a possible physical extraterrestrial life?
Ooh, that's yeah. Now, I remember Kenneth Grant got into a lot of trouble because he was.
That's funny. He's questions
Huh?
about that. Go ahead. Perfect.
Oh,
Perfect.
oh, there. Okay, there, Sam. Yeah. What are your thoughts on Lovecraft or Kenneth Grant's approach to aliens as a spirit archetype? Right. Yeah. I was just going to say. I remember Kenneth Grant got into a lot of trouble with his portion of the OTO and how he was suggesting that there was, interactions with physical aliens. It wasn't just spiritual. Um, and so Sam is asking, what are your thoughts on Lovecraft or Kenneth Grant's approach to aliens?
I'm sorry.
That's
I can't see
okay.
my.
So as a spirit archetype, okay. Well, I think that's definitely, again, I'm a big believer in that. If it's something that speaks to you, and again, I want to emphasize this is a little bit different than chaos magic. Like chaos magic is like, use whatever works for you, which is true. I like that. But they see it more as a tool. So there's a bit of more of an ironic detachment. So there's like, in chaos magic circles, there's this notion of that you use belief as a tool, right? So you practice believing that you're a Christian for a few months. Then after you're done with, and you do rituals informed by that mythology, right? Well, they don't call it mythology, but by that belief system. Like all your magic is based around that Christian philosophy. Then the next 6 months, you become a Satanist, and all your magical works are revolved around worshiping Satan, right? And so, but throughout all of these different experiences, the perspective of the practitioner is primarily having using these beliefs as tools only. My feeling, I think that what is more enriching and more worthwhile is that you create a mythology that is yours or someone else's too, but that really truly speaks to your heart, something that you have a really deep personal connection to, right? And so you're very passionate about that. So if you find that working with Lovecraftian entities or Kenneth Grant's, this notion of aliens, he says, being a spirit archetype, if that really speaks to you and you love it, then I think a person should go with it. I don't think that for me, again, being agnostic though, is that along with that is that passionate connection. It should be balanced with doubt. So, for example, all the things that I talked about from Lucifer and so on and so on and so on, is that I also have the the belief of disbelief that they may not actually exist, that they may just be ideas in my head, but also at the same time being okay with the fact that they or the possibility, not the fact, the possibility that they may be real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So to answer, I guess Keats and also maybe Philip asked, or maybe Sam asked it, just if you personally have connected with an entity that you feel may have been an extraterrestrial. Did you answer that and I missed it?
Oh, did I? Oh, I no, I haven't seen UFOs. I haven't seen like physical evidence of
But
aliens.
okay. So I mean, I think if I'm understanding correctly, there's the UFO question, but then there's also the one about the entity, and so that makes me wonder because my knowledge is very minuscule on this, but I know the gray that Crowley supposedly summoned. I don't know if he was supposed to be a physical embodiment or if it was a spiritual idea, but I just wonder if could that have been Lamb or whatever it was? Could it have been another entity and he just saw it or manifested it in that form, or are they separate entities altogether? Perhaps, do you think?
Right. Yeah. I've asked different people who were into like UFOs, And a couple of people have told me that there are two different kinds of aliens. So there are the aliens that are like us, made of material substance, right? That they actually
Mm.
have to, in order for them to get here, they actually have to have some kind of spacecraft or whatnot, right? So they operate in a material realm like just like we do, but are a lot more advanced in that material realm. And then there's these other kinds of aliens that interact on a psychic level, and so they may not necessarily exist in the material realm. So maybe these are more like spiritual entities and whatnot. They work in another dimension. And so, and then there's a third possibility, which is that there may be material aliens that have the capacity to control their minds in such ways where they could actually influence us or interact with us through their minds. They communicate with each other through their minds. That there's that possibility too. I'm definitely open to that. You know, I'm definitely not someone. I'm not an authority when it comes to aliens. The whole thing, but what you brought up, Chandra, about Crowley and Lam, yeah,
Mm.
it's fascinating. I mean, it's like when he drew that picture of him. This was before all the stereotyped notions of how we saw aliens with these big heads. You know,
Right.
it was like, where did he get that from? I
Right.
think I think that creativity and writing, we tap into something. Definitely, I'm a huge maybe not believer, but embracer of this notion that we have the capacity to tap into a whole an infinite variety of experiences through our minds and through our emotions too. And I think as artists and as writers and whatnot, we've decided to open that door even a bit wider. But I think everyone can, you know.
Dude, I was thinking exactly that today, and yeah, in the context of being an actor and the different lives I've led, you know, and the experiences that I got through that I wouldn't have gotten anywhere else, but they were just as tangible. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
um, the third possibility of the aliens that you mentioned sounds a lot like AI, and so that makes me wonder: do you feel like digital demons are a thing?
Mhm. Um, it's possible. It's possible that there are certain entities that the way they operate and the way they work is through the digital realm. Um, it definitely seems to be that way. I mean, definitely our lives are becoming a lot more digital. And it may be because the influence of these entities know that this is how they can have a stronger effect on us.
Mm.
And the way I feel, like again with the spirit world, like I don't think everything from the spirit world is evil. I don't think that it's all demonic in the sense of trying to do us harm. So if there are these entities that are operating in the digital realm to influence us or to have a relationship with us through the digital realm, I don't think that they're all trying to do us harm. You know, I don't. So I definitely, I think again, it all depends. It's again like I think people should have the way you look at the spirit world should be the same way that you look at the material world and how you interact with people. Is that when you meet someone, you 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 have a certain amount of open heartedness and you have a certain amount of healthy caution. You know, you want to feel this person out and see who they are and what they're about and so forth, and you get to know them. And I think that spirits work in the same way. And again, I don't feel I've never seen a spirit. You know, I've never seen it in physical form. I've never seen these. I think for me, they're all invisible. They don't, our senses can't interact with them. That's how I feel about it. But they have other ways to communicate with us through, again, for me, primarily through our thoughts and through our emotions, and also to our experiences. To our experiences, I think they find a way to communicate with us through our experiences tremendously.
You mean in like as in giving a lesson after the experience, or as in creating an experience for you to learn something, or
Oh,
both?
I'm sorry. What was that? What was the second one?
Creating the experience for you.
That too. Yeah, very much
Mm.
so. Yeah, I definitely. certain things seem to happen, and if you're sensitive enough and aware enough, you feel like there's something behind it for sure. You know, yeah, definitely. And so, again, what when if you're sensitive enough to it, and you're feeling like, well, where is this coming from? Is it trying to do me harm, or maybe I could gain something from this? I think that's where people should have that same kind of relationship with it. And so really, as a practitioner, when you start to enter this realm, you realize that your whole life becomes magical. Your daily life is a magical experience. That there's no real strong distinction between magical practice and your daily living. It all becomes one big, beautiful, magical ritual.
I see that. That's awesome. Wow.
And that's what's
And
great about it. It's great because then it's just like, wow, it makes your life all very magical, and it's wonderful.
yeah, man, it totally is. It's like it's fun. It makes things fun and adventurous. I like exploration and discovery. That's
That,
that speaks to that. Magic
right.
in everyday life, you guys. Who else has something to say? Anybody? We're again, I'll keep going, but just don't want to keep him more than he needs to be. But if you do have any questions, I'd love to hear them out if there's time. Kind of they're talking amongst themselves right now. I thought I saw another one, but
You're talking about Stephen King, I think, and Robert
yeah,
Hicks.
yeah. Where is that question? Well, that oh man, that's gonna go off in a different world. I won't even say what I was thinking.
Oh,
I mean, no, I wasn't silencing anybody else's question. I was silencing my own.
yeah, no worries.
Well, as long as talk more about the magical
Oh,
fatherhood.
right.
That is magic, dude. Keats, thanks for calling that out, man. I'm not a father, but it is magic, right?
Well, yeah, it's definitely one of the most challenging, but also rewarding too. Forms of magic for sure. Yeah, I think the struggle as a parent is the desire that we have. We obviously, I think most parents have this undenying love for our kids, right? Not all parents do, though. I mean, I understand that. Like, not all parents really sincerely love their kids, and it's sad. It's unfortunate that there are some people who bring children into this world and they don't love them, and it's very sad, and they shouldn't be doing that. But so just taking for granted that as a parent we love our children, the and I'll answer that question about the painting behind me too. But the thing that the magic of fatherhood is that it's how will you reach these
Kind of a companion question.
concepts to your kid? Okay, well, my son, he knows about what I do, and he's aware of it. He's super smart, and he's definitely much more of a skeptic. Well, I was at his age. I was very skeptical of the occult too. I was not into the occult as a teenager. It was not my thing. I was much more of a materialist. I did like some spirituality, different notions of spirituality, but for the most part, I didn't really care much for the occult as a teenager either. So I understand. Um, but again, going back, I think that the thing with the idea of being a loving parent, you love your children, and you want certain things for them. And I think what's the hard thing for a parent is that they're going to do their own thing, and it's a balancing act of being that influence And so influencing in a way where you're going to provide some guidance to them, but then also allowing them to grow on their own in possibly ways that you may not be happy with. You may not be happy that they decide to do certain things, and that's the case with my son. Is that there are certain things that I'm like, I'm not too happy that he's doing that. I wish he was a bit more, a number of things which I won't go into. But I have to, but I have to accept that. I have to accept his differences. I have to allow him to be that person who he is.
Sounds a
And
lot like Love Chaos, if I'm not mistaken.
I know, yeah, yes, exactly. It's about allowing life to play out as it is. It's unpredictable. We can't control life. We can't control other people. We can't control our children. They have to be the way that they are, and that is something that I and yeah, it's something that is it's great having children, and so for Keats, by the way, I think you would make a wonderful father.
Yeah,
And
you
had to do, yeah, he would, and I
would.
think that
We're talking
I,
about him.
uh,
I'll ask
yeah,
him.
yeah, I think he'd make a great dad, So but as far as breaching these concepts to our kids, I introduced it to him. I've talked to him about it. He's not. It's not really his thing. He's kind of a semi-atheist. He's not really into. He kind of thinks that we have a soul, but he's very skeptical. And he's really smart. He's really sharp mind, and he doesn't believe what people tell him. Like
Good.
yeah, he's not a sucker. He's very skeptical. So I think that's good. That's a healthy thing to have at any age, especially as a teenager.
Oh yeah. Especially when
And,
you're
yeah.
What's the do you plan to have any more kids? Just curious.
Oh, me? No, I can't. I don't understand how people can have more than one. Man, oof, it's hard enough just having one. And people having a whole bunch, it's just like, wow. But I also too, like, he has an older brother and sister who had a different dad but same mother, and I've been involved in their lives since they were one. And the dad wasn't really much involved in their life, and then he spent 4 years in prison. He had major alcoholic problems. He had to go back to Mexico. He was from Mexico originally, and he had a lot of hard problems. He ended up actually getting murdered a couple years
Oh,
ago.
wow.
Yeah. And so the son, there's a brother and sister. The son, he had a really rough year. He actually attempted suicide 4 times. And it was a hard year for him, for all of us, And so in many ways, I have been like a father figure to him. I never wanted to take away that title of father from their real dad. I think that was that he was their dad, And I really supported him in being, because he had a good side to him. But in many ways, they're like my kids. So I feel like I have enough on my plate with my biological son, and then with his brother and sister, who are basically like my kids too. So I basically have 3 kids, really, if I really think about it.
And that's got to be a handful. I'm thinking about that. Even on that level, even if just that tangential involvement, or I mean, that's a lot of responsibility.
So I'm definitely not against it, but I mean, if it happens, I'm really hoping that I'm done. Being a father is in the cards. All right, you're a fantastic one. Okay, definitely, yes. I look forward to the day when I can see a little Keats running around. Yeah. I didn't believe in magic until I actually practiced it and received a shock to the system. Yeah, I
I
like
dig that, man. Same, yeah.
yeah. I think that was the thing that yeah, it was once you start practicing it and you start seeing the effects of it, then you realize how powerful it is, And he talks about stepfather. Oh yeah, yeah, it's definitely stepfather. I see. For me, I had a really negative experience with my stepfather. So I have a lot of misgivings about being a stepfather myself. So I think that's one of my issues. But I'm definitely there for the both of them in that way. Everyone here is great people. Okay, great, good.
Thanks, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Pragmatic, this has been wonderful.
Yeah.
This is an interesting thing. Phil Blair says, Dalai Lama often says, don't say yes, yes, yes. Instead, ask why.
Yes.
Yeah, man.
That's a good one. I like it. Always ask questions. Questions are extremely important. Yeah.
It's got me in trouble and it's cost relationships, but I still ask the damn questions because they must be asked.
Right. Right. Yes. I think that, I mean, our integrity is very important, and behind the acting out of the integrity is sometimes you do have to ask questions, and yeah. And that's definitely something that I've encouraged my son, and that's why he's very skeptical, and his healthy skepticism is that I talk with him, I engage with him, we talk about a lot of different things, and so I want that his brain to be processing things, what's going on, and just being very thoughtful about life. Here's a question for you, Yogi.
Let's see. Yogi, question for you. Since starting this endeavor, what is a hope for content in the future? Good question. I have so many ideas. I got to narrow it down and be realistic and not overcommit. I'm in such an amazing realm right now at this moment because of not just my conversation with Derek and you guys here, but everything that's happened since doing this. I can't, my soul is just like, for once, I'm like actually looking forward to my days. And so I hope there's more of that. I want to have more conversations with people like you, everyone here, and everyone here. And I hope that I had my spirits saying to me yesterday, and kind of opened up another pathway for me to go with my work. And so I hope to incorporate the Kododama in my work too, Keats, and some audiomancy and stuff with that, but also healing practices and pure counseling and things like that. And most of all that I'm looking forward to in the future is tomorrow night on Nox Mente, because I'm going to be on Nox Mente tomorrow. Love those guys.
You're going to have a lot of fun with them. That's a fun show.
They're the reason that I actually took the step and did this, and Nish was my first guest on the show, and Jerry's awesome. There's not enough Jerry in the world, so everybody encourage him to be there. So cool. Anybody else have anything for Derek? Or Derek, do you have anything for anybody?
Yeah. Well, I think this has been a great conversation. We've definitely explored a lot, and I hope I didn't bore anybody with my stuff or go on too much. I know I can talk for a long time, so.
I hope I'm not cutting you off, Derek, because I don't mean to. It's just
not at all. Yeah, no. I thought. Ooh, wow! I thought we were getting 2 hours. We've done 3 hours and almost 20 minutes.
I'm the 3-hour host, guys.
Yeah.
3-hour tour. Just call me the minnow.
Yeah. One question from Keith. He says, "Any film prospects?" Well, I did make a movie. I was a filmmaker in my 20s, and I did make a feature film. It was a movie I made. It was called "The Bitterness of Jack Henry," and so I have a copy of it. I saw it recently, and you won't be able to you won't be able to find it, Yogi. Yeah, it's not online. I have been thinking about releasing it and putting it on YouTube. The thing is that there's an opening scene I don't want to have there, and I don't have the original of the movie, so I don't have a way to edit it, cut it out, and so I have to figure out a way to find the original so I can cut that opening scene out. So once I can do that, I'll release it, and who knows? Maybe there'll be a future movie in the future. Every now and again, I'll watch a Stanley Kubrick film or a Cassavetes film, and it'll inspire me to be, oh, I want to make movies again, you know. So, and oh yes, I do have a question somebody asked, and Philip asked, and I forgot the answer. So he asked, "What's the painting behind me?" Right? Is it that one?
Which one is it there, Philip?
Is it
They're all.
that one?
Oh, I saw that. I noticed that on your other stream. I'm not seeing it right now, but I remember I mentioned something when you were on with Keats and Niche, I think. Interesting. What is that? Yeah, that one.
This one?
That's the one I'm talking about.
That one? Okay. So that is no. So it how can I say?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So this is a painting that belonged to my father, and he grew up in Santa Barbara. And in Santa Barbara, there was next door to him, his neighbors was a couple. It was a dancing teacher. I don't know where she was from, but she was European, and she would teach dancing classes in their house. And her husband was a painter. So this painting right here it was a painting by the husband, and he would a lot of his paintings were of her dance class. She would do these kind of like modern dances and stuff, and so he would paint the dancers in this kind of style that you can see there. And so that's what that is. It looks like, you know, it looks like it could almost be like demons or spirits dancing or frolicking or something, but what it is just sort of like a expressionistic depiction of modern dance. Man, that it was, yeah, it was again another example of a really talented painter. I don't remember his name, but he was very talented, just like my Eric Fiazzi, who does the covers to my books, and you know, is that these so many talented artists, and they get unrecognized. And this was another example. He spent his whole life just painting these beautiful paintings, and never really got recognized in his lifetime. And it's sad. And one of the beautiful things I think about the internet is that people like that, which I kind of consider myself like one of those outsider artists, is that we can kind of get our voice to be heard. You know, whether it's painting or doing podcasts or writing books or creating music or making movies, you know, in our own way, we can kind of get our voice out there. And for many people who are artists, they had no audience. They had nobody even knew about them. Nobody being able to appreciate the work they did, and that's why I don't really see the internet as being this horrible, evil thing. Is that there are good things about it, and one of them is that doing things like this and reaching people through our work.
Yeah, I agree. And even within our lives, well, actually, I don't know how old you are, but in my life, I'm part analog, you know. So I grew up in a time, a lot of my life, you didn't have that opportunity as an artist. So it's cool now.
Exactly. It was very hard, you know, and it still is hard, but at least we have an opportunity to express ourselves and connect with other people.
For sure.
Eric Fiazzi, the painter of the covers of my books, he's actually still alive. He's still alive. He lives here in LA in the Valley, and I haven't seen. Good night, Ian.
Night, Ian. Thanks for coming by. Dream well. He's a game dreamer. He has an interesting paradigm. You should check him out.
Oh, huh.
Comparative to a pop magic system in my mind. It has comparisons, but anyway.
Oh, very cool. Okay, cool. I wonder if we're friends on social media somewhere, huh?
He's the dreaming for gamers is his thing.
Oh, my wording worried me. Oh yeah, no, Eric Fiazzi's still alive. He's struggling though. He's getting towards the end. It's a bit sad to see him. You know, he's definitely not the Eric Fiazzi, the painter, my friend, my mentor. He's not as sharp as when I first met him. His mind is not all there. He has a hard time hearing. Whenever I call him, he can't. 90% of what I say, he can't hear. He has a hearing device. It doesn't seem to help him. So it's a bit sad. It's a bit sad when you know someone. He played a huge role at a time, and I met him in 2014. And so I met him when I was just quitting alcohol, and his group dynamics class was huge for opening me up and working on myself. And my friendship with him really grew from then, and I really looked up to him. And he just so brilliant. His emotional intelligence is out of this world. I've never met anyone who was as sharp as he was. And so now to see him just kind of decaying is a bit sad, but it's part of life. It's one of those things, you know. And my father, my biological father, one of the nice things about him dying relatively young at 64 is he died before that could happen to him. So I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like, I think ultimately we want to have people live as long as possible, but it's just sad when you know people are so brilliant and then their mind just starts to go, you know.
You
And
wonder
so
how much of the experience they're conscious of, or I do. I wonder how much they're suffering because of that.
yeah, I think there's a part of him, maybe not now, but in the beginning when his mind was starting to decay. I think it probably brought him a great deal of sadness, very much so.
Before I forget, I mentioned to you on in the chat room the other day when we were in Philip Hine's show with Keats about Foolish Fish. I'm not promoting them or anything, but I just think you'd love Foolish Fish. Have you seen that website yet?
No, not yet. What is that?
Amazing occult books, really beautiful books, is why I think you would like it. It's like book porn, but it's all occult books. Yeah.
Nice. Foolish Fish. Okay.
And then getting some good comments from people out there.
Yeah, I think people are leaving.
Yeah, it sounds like it looks like they really appreciated this, though. Derek,
Yeah,
thank you for all your time, man.
yeah, yeah. This is great. This has been really great. I'm really glad to see you and you know, you're a distinctive voice, and I think it's great to see you, you know, doing your thing. You know, and that's what we're all trying. That's what we're all doing, is just we're expressing ourselves. You know, and I'm glad to see you here, and that you've come into this world, so to speak, this world of the occult and counterculture and spirituality and whatnot. You know, explorers of this part of life.
It's a good community. I'm thrilled. Hey, did we give you proper space to make sure people know how to get your book and or any of your books, but your most recent book, I was thinking, because the Grimoire we talked about, or anything else that you'd like to promote or mention?
I think that well, I've already talked about, you know, a lot of my work, so I think that's been enough. I think though that if people want to check out, you know, go to my website, and it's love-chaos.com. So LOVE-CHAOS.com. So love-chaos.com. And it's got everything there, links to all my books, even my music albums. I did actually do music albums years ago. I did 9 music albums. Most of them are related to my books. My dad's play is on my website too. Every single interview I've been on, I think it's getting close to 20 now. There's a links to all those interviews. A lot of
I'm gonna dive into.
Yeah, a lot of them I've done with Keats, and yes, and for some reason, the place where I've gotten the most engagement with people on social media has been this Love Chaos Facebook group. Has been, as Keats says, yeah, it's really got a lot of attention. And in
I
fact,
apologize to your people. I forgot that that was happening, and I hope they had a voice.
no, I shared this link over there. So
Okay.
before, yeah, it was about half an hour before. So, but that's fine. People will be able to see the recorded version of this too, whenever that's available. So that, yeah, I'll make sure people see that. But yeah, the Love Chaos Facebook group is definitely where I'm getting the most traction with people. So Yeah, definitely. If you want to get in there, if you're on Facebook, I know Facebook is not everyone's favorite, but
I left
those
a long time.
I would say even regardless of of the Love Chaos group, there's a lot of really interesting groups on Facebook, especially for the occult. There's a lot of interactions, and it's there's a group for bands that you like. Any topic you can think of, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Oh, that's encouraging. I might go back and just for that aspect. I left about 2 years ago, and haven't looked back. But
Yeah,
that's and I've heard other creators say the same thing and other occult people.
yeah. There are some good groups on there. Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Awesome. And if they want to reach out and connect with you, are you available for that, or how does
Yeah,
that work?
sure. Yeah, I was a bit more promoting that. Like I was doing, like Keats and I actually did this thing called a Love Chaos Dialogue, and I was looking to reach out. And I actually did quite a not like a huge amount, but I did a fair amount of these Love Chaos dialogues where I was helping people. And so I was doing that, and I was actually going to start doing groups, Love Chaos groups, and it's actually in the second book, the formats for how to do those groups, and people are welcome to do them. And if people want to do them and they want to reach out to me and help, people are welcome to. I just last year, huh?
I might take you up on that.
Okay. I just I have to be careful though because I last year I've been having serious health issues, and if I push myself too much, I've noticed it takes it takes a bit of me down, And I already work in the helping profession, and I can get I don't want to get burnt out, and
Get
this is one of
spent.
the reasons. Yeah, it's great to help people, but it can take a lot out of you. And if I'm trying to do too many things, it's not going to be good for me, and I won't be effective either. I'm already helping people as a counselor, and so I'm already giving myself to people in that way. I definitely won't deny people, but I'm not really promoting myself too much out there to help people. Yeah, it's definitely not something I'm doing now. I'm more focusing on writing these works of fiction. That's more my thing now. But definitely very much willing to come on podcasts and talking to people, and people have questions or interests or concerns, then I'm definitely here for people. And so probably the best way for people to do that, if you do, is to out to me on Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, that's fine. I'm also on Instagram. So I'm on Instagram as well. And also, if you don't want to do that on Instagram, there's my email, which is on my website. You'll find it's on the main website. People can find my email that I use, and it's there. So yeah. So if everything is on my website, absolutely everything. Yeah.
Super good. That's cool. Nice. And again, by outlining the format for groups in your books, and also by all the tools that you empower people with, I hope that serves you well in these times when you aren't able to be as present as you may want to be.
Yeah, I'll leave it up to other people. If people wanted to use those formats for those groups and they have questions, then I'm willing to help them out for sure. Yeah, I just at this point won't be facilitating groups myself. But yeah, if people want to do it themselves, I'll be more than happy to see that happen. Sure.
Man, you have a cosmic touch. Even if you can't physically be there, you're still making waves. Thank you.
Sure. We'll see what happens. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. Yeah.
Dudes, everybody who's still here, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. Everybody on Facebook, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time, and Derek, I hope to have you again, man.
Yes, definitely. It was a lot of fun being here.
Well,
thank you.
Oh, sorry.
It's a pleasure being on here, and it's a pleasure to get to know you, and I look forward to getting to know you more as well.
Rock on. Thanks, man. Coolness. Yeah. All right, everybody. Well, I guess we're signing out. Thanks for riding aboard the minnow. That's what. And have yourself a lovely day. Be sure to go see that.
Beautiful things that Navier, Keats, everybody there. So many nice things.
Look at all that.
I know.
No, I don't in my physical world. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Muy bueno.
All right.
All right, Chloe, sleep on. Again, hope you're well. And
Thank
talk to
you.
you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Gender.
Good night, everyone.